My parents gave me up for adoption when I was 6 years old because I was a boy. After 20 years, they asked me for money for my sister's university fees. I'm 25 now. My story starts when I was 6, or rather, from the moment I was born. I'm the third and youngest child of my parents. We weren't rich, but they earned enough to raise 3 kids. We lived in a small town in an old house, which saved us a lot of expenses. My grandparents had a farm that covered many of our needs, especially in the kitchen. My dad worked as a truck driver and came home every 3 or 4 days, while my mom worked as a waitress. My parents already had 2 daughters when I was conceived. I was the unexpected child, and we all know how parents feel when an unplanned child arrives. Of course, I had no idea about this when I was a child, but as I grew older, I slowly started to understand. It wasn't pleasant to know I wasn't wanted. My parents wanted to get rid of me, but the doctor advised against it because it could cause serious health problems for my mom. They especially wanted a girl. Their reason was simple. My mom wanted me to wear the hand-me-down clothes from my older sisters, so she wouldn't have to buy new clothes for me. My 2 older sisters were only a year apart, so they wore the same size clothes and shared everything. They had fun with that, but when I was born as a boy, my parents were disappointed. They hated me. They made me wear girls' clothes and even sent me to school in my sister's old uniforms. It was very embarrassing for me as a child, even though I was very young. I still have a blurry memory of being bullied for wearing girls' uniforms and having long hair. If I complained, all I got was a slap from my mom. I grew up listening to nothing but abuse and harsh words from my parents. Most of them I didn't understand at the time, but when I did, I hated them. My dad was better than my mom, but he was usually absent and had a volatile nature. Some days he seemed neutral, but other days he was just as cruel as my mom, if not more. I won't say I was a saint. I rebelled. As I started to understand their prejudice toward me, I noticed my sisters always got the best of everything, while I got the leftovers. I started being mean to them because, as a child, I blamed them for my misery. Yes, I was punished for my actions, sometimes harshly. I had to make my own breakfast, and many times I went to bed without dinner. I was just a 6-year-old child going through this. There's one incident I remember quite vividly, and I believe it was the turning point in my life. One day, or perhaps that week, I don't remember exactly, I was severely bullied in the playground for dressing like a girl. I came home and discovered that my mom had bought new clothes for my sisters for the holidays. In a fit of rage, I grabbed a pair of scissors and cut them into confetti. I know it was bad, and I'm not proud of what I did, but I was tired of being made fun of because of my parents. I acted out of pain, not malice. Instead of understanding my pain, my parents saw it as a sin, something that deserved the strictest punishment. They put me up for adoption. They waited for a month, but no one was interested. That anger was also directed at me. They constantly told me how useless I was and how no one wanted me. I even heard my mom say, "I wish I had known your gender. I would never have brought you into this world." The thought that my parents hated me so much, for something beyond my control, still haunts me. After a while, when no one came forward to adopt me, my parents started talking about it with their friends and family. Dad knew someone from the neighboring town who ran a food truck with his wife. They were relatively poorer than us, but they wanted a child. They were over 30 and had been trying to have a child for over a decade without luck. Dad spoke to them and they agreed to adopt me immediately. I remember the moment when Dad told Mom and my sisters. They were thrilled and happy to get rid of me. Dad also warned that they were poor and that I might never go to school, but Mom just rolled her eyes and said, "Who cares? Just take him there tomorrow." I stood in the corner, holding the curtain, stunned. Even though I hated my family, I was scared and hurt to have to leave them. I had tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry out loud. They were so happy enjoying the moment that they forgot I was there. When Dad saw me crying, he came over, rubbed my back and said, "Pack your things. We leave tomorrow morning for your new family." I cried out loud when he said this, but I realized it was falling on deaf ears. So I went to my room and packed my things. The journey to my new family was a long one. They were really poor. They had a small house with one room, and they had turned a storage space into my bedroom. I didn't complain because at least they made an effort to provide me with a room. I had never had my own room before. My sisters had their own beds, and I was placed in a bed in the corner of their room with a small wardrobe for my belongings. This room was smaller than ours, but it was cozy. My new parents, Mary and John, were warm and loving, but I came from a broken home. I had never experienced love. I saw how they showed love to my sisters, but never to me. I doubted their intentions and took their love as something temporary. I tried not to get attached to them because I feared they might also abandon me. Childhood trauma. Took me months to realize that they truly loved me and weren't faking it. That year, I didn't go to school because my parents moved me in the middle of the term. But my new parents promised they would send me to school the next year. I saw them working extra hard to save money for my education. That's when I started to love them back. My adoption turned out to be a blessing in disguise. My biological parents never showed up after they sent me to Mary and John, and honestly, I was relieved. For the first time, I was treated for who I was, a child, not a burden. Mary and John were hard workers. They worked 14 to 16 hours a day in their food truck, which was parked just outside their apartment. So I was never alone. When they were working, I could see them directly from the window of my room. Over time, I started spending my days in the food truck, helping them in any way I could. When I enrolled in school, I focused all my time on my studies, but I also helped with household chores when I had free time. I was just over 10 years old when I helped John at the cash register. I was good at math, so I learned about business and accounting at a very young age. After high school, I wanted to dedicate myself completely to their business, but they both insisted that I finish my university education first. They paid for it using their savings. They were getting too old and weak to handle the food truck, and I wanted to take on the responsibility, just as they had done for me. However, they assured me they could manage for a few more years and encouraged me to continue with my studies. I studied business and accounting at university because I ultimately wanted to become an entrepreneur. The day I graduated was the happiest day of my life. Mary and John were overjoyed and even invited my biological parents to attend the ceremony. But they didn't show up. After university, I wanted to run the food truck and let Mary and John retire, but they had other plans for me. They had saved up a significant amount of money and gave it to me. I was overwhelmed by their gesture. They said they could survive on their own for a few more years, but they didn't want me to get involved with the food truck. They gave me the money to start my own business. I didn't want to waste their money, so I used my business knowledge to find a small local restaurant in a good location that was struggling with sales. I proposed to the owner to lease it under a profit-sharing model. After several rejections, I finally got a deal. I started from scratch, renovated the place, revamped the menu to appeal to millennials and Generation Z, and offered the best service to customers. Sales skyrocketed within a year, and I doubled the initial investment. 4 years later, I now have 3 successful cafes in the city. I improved Mary and John's living situation by getting them a better apartment, and I found a small place for myself. I had been living with them until then. I asked them to sell their food truck and enjoy their retirement, but they insisted on continuing it for their happiness. When I left home with my suitcase, I never imagined I'd be a university graduate, but here I am, running restaurant chains in the city. Everything was going smoothly until last month. It was just another normal day at work. I was busy at the cash register of one of my restaurants when I saw a familiar face. It felt like I was seeing a ghost, my biological father. I hadn't seen him in nearly 2 decades. He looked pale and weak. He crossed the store with a wide smile and hugged me. There were customers in the store, so I didn't say anything and led him to a corner. His face brought back all the painful memories of my childhood. I wouldn't have been able to write so many details about my past if he hadn't reappeared in my life. He said he was so happy and proud to see me successful in life. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, speechless. He mentioned that he was just passing through and had met John, who had told him about my successful business. He said he would bring Mom on the weekend. I didn't say anything, and he left shortly after. After finishing my day, I went to John and told him I didn't want to meet my biological parents, who had disinherited me because I was a boy. They knew about my painful childhood, and I just wanted to run away and hide somewhere for the weekend. But Mary insisted that I forgive my parents and move on. I agreed to meet them, but only on the condition that Mary and John would be there with me. So, my biological parents came to John's house. I thought they might apologize for what they had done, but let me tell you, they showed no remorse. Instead, they listed all the favors they had done for me. Mom said I should be grateful to them for finding such good parents who raised me to be a successful person. I was shocked to hear that. I wanted to snap back, but Mary squeezed my hand, signaling me to calm down. I diplomatically said I was blessed to have John and Mary as my parents. I can only describe the meeting as awkward for me. The next day, I got a call from my mother. I didn't recognize her voice. How could I? It was the first time she had called me in 20 years. It was a request for money. She said Dad had lost his regular job and had been working as a contractor for years. She had also lost her job because apparently no restaurant needed a 50-year-old waitress. They were struggling to make ends meet. I asked how much they needed, and she said $2,000 would be enough. She had borrowed that money from her friends over the past few months to buy food, and now her friends were asking for it back, and she had nothing left. I hung up, saying I would think about it and call her back. The thing is, as much as I hate them, I felt bad because people were pressuring them for money. Sometimes I felt like they were just exploiting me, but what if they really did need help? I feel guilty for letting them go through the embarrassment, even though I had the money. Update 1. Thanks for all the comments and feedback. I got mixed reactions from people about helping my mom with the $2,000. I discussed it with Mary and John. Mary was happy I was considering helping my parents, but also warned me to be careful. John said it was my money, so the decision should be mine. He also shared the same fear as me. What if they were trying to take advantage of my emotions? After thinking about it a lot, I decided to make this one final attempt with my biological parents, and I transferred the money to their account. I felt good being able to help my family, even though they had been cruel to me. But I was wrong. Or maybe I was right because I feared they would try to exploit me financially, and indeed that's exactly what they were trying to do. A week after sending the money, Mom called me again. I answered with mixed emotions. She thanked me for the help and then said, "Your sisters want to see you. When do you think you could come?" At that moment, I truly felt like my family wanted me back. I knew my parents had wronged me as a child and I hated them for it, but I never hated my sisters. Maybe when I was a little boy, I did some bad things, but after growing up, I never blamed them. It wasn't their fault. Sometimes I even thought that my parents had gotten rid of me because they were poor, not because they were evil. I told Mom we could meet next Sunday, and I could drive to their house. She interrupted and said, "Why don't we meet somewhere else?" I didn't think much about it and just agreed. She said she would send me the details of the place and time. After hanging up, I felt this unease. Why didn't she want me to visit their house? I mean, it doesn't matter where we meet, but still, when you reconnect with your family after so many years, don't you think you would invite them to your house instead of meeting in a restaurant? Still, she sent the details, and it turned out to be one of the most elegant restaurants in the city. I didn't think much of it at the time because my mind was preoccupied with the fact that they didn't invite me home. I went to the restaurant and they were already there. My sisters ran up and hugged me. For a moment, I was happy to see them after so many years. I enjoyed catching up with them until the menu arrived, and they started ordering food. They deliberately picked the most expensive items. When they asked what I wanted, my dad just smiled and said, "Order the most expensive." My son is a big man now. That was so petty of him to say. If it had been me or Mary saying that, it would have been a proud moment. But coming from my biological parents, it was mean and cruel. There was nothing I could do but sit there and watch them devour the food, emptying my wallet. Yes, I paid the bill. I had some pretty wild thoughts in my head, like disappearing before the bill came, but that would have been too harsh on them. I swore at that moment never to fall for their emotional trap again. I was cold the rest of the afternoon, and I bet they didn't even notice. When I left, they didn't even invite me to their home. Instead, my older sister asked, "Where are we going for dinner?" I faked a smile and said, "Nowhere," and said goodbye. I went back home and told Mary about my greedy family. She was shocked when I told her. She's a very kind and independent woman, so all of this really disturbed her. She advised me not to be a fool again and not to think too much about them. She told me to focus on my own life. I did that. My sisters called me about a week later, but I didn't respond. My mom called too, but I didn't answer. It's been 2 months since then, and now they've stopped texting or calling. I think they got the hint that I didn't want them in my life. Update 2. Hello everyone. Thanks for all the support. As I mentioned in my last post, I stopped responding to my sisters and my biological parents because I realized they only wanted me for my money. Almost 5 months later, yesterday my mom called again. I saw the phone ringing and answered without thinking. She started with some superficial small talk, asking about me and my job. It sounded so fake and pretentious that I couldn't stand it. I asked her what she wanted. She sighed and said that my sisters had to drop out of college because Dad couldn't afford their tuition. They wanted me to pay for their university education. I was furious. She asked me to calm down and said they were my sisters, my family, and I should help them. At that moment, I was at work, and I didn't want to lose my temper, so I hung up. She called again in the afternoon, and I ignored the call a few times, but it was bothering me. Ignoring her wasn't working. I realized that the next time she called, I would answer. When I answered, she asked if my sisters were excited about going back to college. Then she asked how we were going to handle it, if I was going to pay up front for the semester. She suggested I transfer the full amount to her, and she'd pay the tuition before each semester. She said I shouldn't make it complicated. I said, "Wait a minute, I'm not making any payments." She was so surprised. She didn't expect me to say that. She asked, "What do you mean you don't want to pay up front?" "It's fine, we can pay in installments." I repeated, "I don't want to pay at all." I told her that my older sister's education wasn't my responsibility, especially since my parents abandoned me and never cared for me. Even now, they were only talking to me because they wanted to take advantage of my money. She was boiling with rage and lost her temper with my words. She said, "Don't forget, we gave you life. Everything you are is because of us. Your dad found a good family for you, and now when it's time for you to repay us, you can't avoid your responsibilities. Your sisters and your parents are your responsibility, and you have to take care of all of us." I had so much to say, but it felt like talking to deaf and narcissistic people, so I just said, "Well, yes, I owe a lot to my parents. Those are John and Mary. They deserve all the credit for my success. As for you, I don't know who you are. None of my documents have your names, and I don't have any photos with you, so I don't think I know you." She threw insults at me, but I said, "Wrong number, ma'am," and hung up. Now, they can call me selfish, cruel, or whatever they want, but I'm not going to waste my hard-earned money on my so-called family. They were never my family. They discarded me when I was only 6 years old. Yes, I got comments on my previous updates about calling John and Mary by their names and not Mom and Dad. I actually do call them Mom and Dad, but not right away after I arrived with them. I did when they took me to school and worked hard to meet my needs and loved me. But for the sake of narrating things here, I referred to them by their names. John and Mary are my true mom and dad, and my biological parents. I don't call them anything. They don't exist to me. My nephew called me an easy woman, so we stopped paying for his university tuition that we had been covering. I am 39 and have been married to my husband, Nick, 42, for over 15 years. It's been a very peaceful relationship for me. The only problem we had was due to infertility caused by a medical condition. We couldn't conceive, and it was devastating because we really wanted to have a child. The adoption laws in our state are very complicated, and we both have demanding jobs, so we decided not to pursue adoption. It didn't make sense to adopt a baby and then not have the time to take care of it. Instead, we decided to help children in need, and we took on the responsibility of financing my sister-in-law's children's education. However, a recent incident has made me question this decision and reconsider continuing to support her kids because of their arrogant behavior. A bit of context. My sister-in-law divorced when her children were young, and since then, she has struggled to get by. Her ex-husband was abusive and an alcoholic, and the child support she received was minimal due to his low income. She works 2 jobs, but her limited income makes it difficult to cover their education expenses. That's why my husband and I decided to help. My sister-in-law has 3 children, ABA 23, Ross 20, and Rastin 17. They were once good kids, but it seems like they've lost their way. ABA, her daughter, is a true star. She graduated from university with honors, started her career at one of the most prestigious multinational companies, and is doing incredibly well. My sister-in-law, and honestly all of us, couldn't be prouder. She was always the smartest and sweetest, and it's amazing to see her thrive. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for the boys, Ross and Rastin. They were brilliant as children, but when they hit adolescence, they seemed to lose interest in their studies. The situation has become so bad that I felt the need to write about their behavior. It all started to go downhill when Ross graduated from high school. We asked him about the details of his courses so we could plan for his university tuition. He surprised us by saying he didn't want to go to university and instead wanted us to give him the money in cash. My husband asked him what his plan was, and Ross said he wanted to start a business. When asked what kind of business, Ross didn't have a clear answer. He said he had something in mind, but it wasn't concrete. We told him we didn't need a detailed plan, but we at least wanted to know what kind of business he was thinking about. He gave a vague explanation that he wanted to start an online business. My husband and I were skeptical about investing in his project because his idea wasn't clear, and he didn't have the skills for it. We didn't immediately reject his request, but told him we needed some time to think it over. He agreed, but a few weeks later he started pushing us as if we owed him the money. After much back and forth, my husband and I made it clear that we didn't trust his ability to manage the money and wouldn't invest in his project. Ross got furious, but not directly with us. Instead, he went through my sister-in-law and my mother-in-law. His argument was that the university tuition we had set aside for him was his money, and he should be able to do whatever he wanted with it. I found no logic in this sense of entitlement. Yes, we took on the responsibility of funding his education, and we have the means to help financially, but that doesn't mean he should feel entitled to handouts. My mother-in-law tried to convince us to finance his business idea, but my husband said no. We didn't trust his half-baked plan. My mother-in-law argued that we were breaking our commitment to supporting my sister-in-law's children. My husband made it clear that while we would support his entrepreneurial venture, we wouldn't be contributing financially. Not at this time, anyway. Perhaps, in the future, if we gained confidence in his plans, we could help. We also told him we would still be willing to pay for his university tuition if he decided to study again. After that, there was no further discussion. But I later found out that my mother-in-law sold some of her family heirlooms to fund Ross's business idea. God knows what happened, but Ross's business never took off. Since then, we've been distant from them. Then, spring came, and Ross came knocking at our door to apologize for his rude behavior. He said he now intended to go to university and asked us to fund his tuition. His tone was still hostile, but the distance was evident. He used to be friendly and talkative, but now he was only offering brief, courteous exchanges. 2 or 3 months ago, it was Rastin's 17th birthday, and my sister-in-law invited us to dinner. The evening went as usual. Ross was also there but was silent, responding only with nods or one-word answers. Then everything changed when Rustin made a hurtful comment about me. He said, "How could Nick, my husband, find you attractive when you're so average and ugly?" I looked at him in shock and disbelief. He added, "It's hard to believe anyone could find you attractive. I just couldn't process it." Nick exploded and confronted him. The worst part was that before Nick could react, everyone else, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, and Rose, laughed at the comment like it was some sort of joke. They only stopped when Nick got angry. My mother-in-law tried to downplay it, saying, "He's just a kid. He was trying to be funny." Nick demanded that Rustin take back his words and apologize immediately. Rustin defended himself, claiming it was just a passing comment, meant to lighten the mood. Nick was furious, insisting that making disrespectful comments about someone's appearance wasn't humor. Rustin kept justifying himself until Nick interrupted, shouting, "You apologize now or face the consequences." The room went silent. I was drowning in embarrassment, anger, and pain. Nick looked at my sister-in-law for support, but instead of reprimanding Rustin for his disrespect, she said, "Calm down, Nick. People can have their opinions." Nick stood up from the table and said, "We're not having any conversation until you all apologize." He gave me a pat on the back and said, "Let's go." I stood up, and my mother-in-law grabbed my hand, saying, "It's his birthday. Don't ruin the moment over something trivial. He's just a kid, but you're an adult, right? You should know how to handle this kind of criticism from kids." I let go of her hand and said, "He's not a kid, and even if he were, it's your daughter's responsibility to teach him manners, but clearly, she's failed." While we were having this conversation, I noticed, out of the corner of my eye, that Rustin and Rose were looking at each other and smiling, clearly enjoying the humiliation they'd caused me. I looked at them and said, "It's not funny. You're cruel, and you'll pay for your behavior." I left before anyone could respond. A week after the incident, I came home and found my sister-in-law and mother-in-law arguing with my husband. I walked in, pretending they weren't there, and went to my room. My sister-in-law asked to speak with me. They both apologized and said they had scolded Rustin after we left, and that he felt guilty for his behavior. I asked, "Okay, where is he? Why haven't I gotten an apology from him?" My sister-in-law said she was apologizing on his behalf. The truth was, Rustin was too proud to apologize, but since they needed our money, my sister-in-law did it for him. Her apology was so superficial that it meant nothing to me. Her argument was that Rustin was just an angry teenager who didn't know his limits, and that's why he got carried away with his humor. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law were so rigid that they'd do anything to defend their kids. But, in the end, my sister-in-law said I should discipline my own children. Her tone, however, said the opposite. I told them it would be better if they controlled their emotions and that this would be the last time they spoke to me that way. Since then, I've been keeping a low profile. Despite the incident, we processed the payment for Ross's next semester. A week later, we attended Nick's grandfather's 75th birthday. My mother-in-law, sister-in-law, and both of the boys were also there. ABA couldn't attend due to work. I wore a dress with a deep neckline. I like wearing off-the-shoulder dresses and ones with plunging necklines. When I made eye contact with the boys, I could feel their gazes, and it made me uncomfortable. They were openly staring at my chest. I felt so disgusted. I mean, they were half my age and they were looking at me like that. But I ignored it and tried to enjoy the evening with everyone else. During the celebration, I made a toast for Nick's grandfather. When I finished, everyone raised their glasses except for the two boys, who exchanged smirking glances. It made me feel so uncomfortable that I wanted to leave right away. A while later, as I passed by them, I felt like they said something and laughed as they looked at me. It was nothing short of harassment. They were acting like street harassers. I had enough, so I decided to confront them. I stopped and asked, "What's the problem?" They were surprised. I asked, "What's so funny about me that you find it amusing every time you see me?" They froze and mumbled a response. I told them, "I'm not a teenager who will let myself be harassed by your behavior." Rustin got nervous and stayed silent, but Ross stepped in and said they were just relaxing and their smiles had nothing to do with me. I told them it would be better if they controlled their behavior instead of defending themselves. I turned to leave, not wanting to hear any more. I was just 2 steps away when I heard Ross call me a bitch, and both of them laughed. I immediately turned around, and they stopped laughing, looking uncomfortable. I asked, "What did you just say?" Rustin impulsively started apologizing, saying, "I'm sorry, it wasn't about you. We were looking at something on the phone." I saw Ross grab Rustin's wrist, and Rustin stopped talking. Ross said, "We didn't say anything. Maybe the music was too loud, and you thought you heard something." I lost my patience and shouted, "If you have the guts, repeat what you just said." I was about to slap them when Nick stepped in. I told him what had happened, and he was furious. By then, others had gathered, including my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Ross argued that he hadn't said anything, and I was just making it up. I asked, "If you didn't say anything, then why did Rustin say it wasn't about me?" Rustin changed his story in front of everyone, claiming he only apologized because he thought he had offended me somehow. It didn't make any sense. We had to calm things down for Grandpa's sake since he was getting anxious. We didn't want to ruin his big day. I stayed for dinner, and Nick was constantly by my side, but the rest of the night was awkward. My sister-in-law and mother-in-law kept giving me strange looks. The next morning, ABA called me. She had heard about the incident from someone and felt bad for me. She said I should have slapped each of them immediately and even suggested that we cut off their funding, since they didn't respect the value we added to their lives. While I completely agreed with Nick's decision, she asked what I would have done in my place. Update 1. Thank you all for validating our actions. Nick and I have decided to withdraw the financial support we've been giving them. We haven't been in contact with them since the incident, and Nick said they should come to us first if they want anything. We don't need them, they need us. So we stayed out of touch and they didn't approach us until they needed money. Rustin graduated from high school and wanted to attend a private design university with an outrageous tuition fee. Look at his ego and audacity. Neither my sister-in-law nor Rustin called or visited us. Rustin simply sent Nick an email with his university details and a payment link as if nothing happened. Nick ignored the email. Instead of calling or visiting us, Rustin just followed up by sending a reminder email 2 weeks later. Then my mother-in-law called Nick and said, "Honey, Rustin's been waiting for you to pay his tuition. It seems like you didn't see his email." Nick responded, "Rustin, who? I don't know her." There was a moment of silence, maybe because she was confused by Nick's response. She then asked, "Are you still upset over that trivial matter? Didn't the boys clear up the misunderstanding? I'm sure your wife exaggerated the situation." Nick, tired of all the nonsense, said, "Enough. We've made the decision to cut off their support entirely. We don't know who they are or what they'll do with their lives, and we don't care." My mother-in-law tried to convince him, saying these conflicts shouldn't jeopardize their lives and that we should be more mature and forgive them. Nick simply said, "No thanks," and hung up. Minutes later, my sister-in-law started bombarding Nick's phone with calls, which he ignored. Then she began sending apologetic messages, saying she would make the boys apologize in person, but we shouldn't deprive them of their education. Nick responded that it was too late. They should have realized this much earlier. The next day, my sister-in-law showed up at our door with my mother-in-law. Nick didn't answer them and told them, "We don't welcome disrespectful people into our home or our lives, so it's better if you stay away from us." My sister-in-law started crying, saying she and the boys were sorry for what happened and wanted another chance. Nick asked, "If the boys are really sorry, why didn't they come with you to apologize?" My mother-in-law intervened, saying, "You know the boys are young and hormonal. They don't realize the consequences of their actions, but adults like us should be aware of ours. We shouldn't make them pay such a high price for their childish jokes. Their careers, their lives are at stake." Her defensive tone made me furious, and I told her exactly what she deserved to hear. Calling your aunt a bitch is not a childish joke. It's pure machismo. Then they lied and tried to make me look bad in front of everyone, which was malicious. Commenting on my appearance was tasteless and disrespectful. These actions have consequences, and you play a role in this by allowing that behavior. I'm sorry they'll suffer because their mother did a terrible job raising them. They'll suffer all their lives if they don't change their attitude, and no one but you will be responsible for that. They both scowled and looked at Nick, hoping he'd intervene, but he stood firm and told them to leave. I slammed the door behind them. I don't know if it was the right thing to do, but it's what I did. That same night, ABA called me and praised me for standing up for myself. She said we should have made this decision the first time Rustin commented on my appearance. ABA told me that my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law's mom, had called her a witch for siding with me, but ABA had confronted her. My sister-in-law asked ABA to finance Rustin's university tuition, just like Ross's. ABA lost her temper with my mother-in-law, telling her to stop pampering her children. She told her that instead of defending them, she should hold them accountable for their actions and let them handle things on their own. My sister-in-law then asked ABA to stop acting like my puppet and to support her brothers. ABA replied that she had made her decision and didn't want to be associated with people who embarrass women by calling them whores. This made me reflect on my sister-in-law's character. On one hand, she was begging ABA to help with her daughter, even though ABA had just started her career. How could she possibly take on the responsibility of her brother's education? Why couldn't they get a loan if they were so determined to study, which I doubted very much. Update 2. New information. Let me start by answering a common question from my readers. Many of you asked why we decided to finance these narcissistic kids. Well, they weren't bad when they were children. All three of them were hardworking and well-behaved. My sister-in-law, though not warm or friendly, was at least civil with me. We took responsibility for shaping their lives for a better future. The oldest, ABA, made the most of the opportunity and now works at a multinational company in Europe. But the boys went off track, and my sister-in-law never even tried to correct them. So, after we cut off their financial support, I started hearing many horrible things they said about me. They claimed I wore revealing dresses to compensate for my ugly face, that I was vain and useless, and that I had manipulated Nick into cutting ties with his own family. I took it in stride. My sister-in-law had been cut off from her savings account, so it was natural for her to talk badly about us. I was fine with our decision. Months passed, and one day Nick got a desperate call from my mother-in-law. Ross and Rasten had been arrested by the police for their involvement in illegal drug activities. While Ross was arrested, Rasten was taken into custody for further investigation. My mother-in-law begged Nick to bail them out and save their lives. Nick hesitated for a moment, because after everything that had happened, he wasn't convinced they were completely innocent. Still, it was a matter of their lives. My sister-in-law insisted her sons were innocent and that they had been used as scapegoats by their friends. Nick wasn't fully convinced, but he gave them the benefit of the doubt and went to the police station to get the details. I didn't stop him from supporting his family, but I didn't go with him. My sister-in-law and my mother-in-law were also at the station. The police said it was a non-bailable offense, and they would have to appear in court. Nick involved his lawyer to get the whole story, and the truth came out, exposing my sister-in-law's golden children. It turned out Ross was actually involved in drug-related activities. He was running a network distributing illegal substances to college students and was even planning to expand his network to high school students through Rasten, the younger one. Rasten narrowly escaped a more intense interrogation because he was just a few months away from turning 18. My sister-in-law begged Nick to hire a lawyer for Ross so he could get him out as soon as possible. But after learning the truth, Nick refused to spend his money on him. He said, "Let the judge decide what's best for him." Thanks to my sister-in-law's luck, Ross received a lighter sentence because he was a rookie in the business and had been influenced by a veteran who pulled him into the world of crime. Ross had been seduced by the easy money that came with it. The cost of his bail to get him out before finishing his sentence was incredibly high, and Nick refused to contribute. After that, my sister-in-law openly turned bitter toward us. She even claimed that I had falsely accused Ross to get revenge. And guess what? Some foolish people believed her story. I could only laugh at those who thought they could fool the police and play with state law. My sister-in-law didn't stop there. She even disinherited ABA for defending me and refusing to pay the huge bail for Ross. Currently, Rasten has been released from the correctional facility, while Ross continues to serve his sentence in prison. I'm not sure how their careers or lives will turn out after this incident, but honestly, I don't care at all. Recently, my mother-in-law visited Nick at his office and told him that she was disinheriting him because he had abandoned his sister and nephews when they were at their lowest point. Nick's heart was broken that his mother never appreciated everything we did for her and for my sister-in-law's children. She never defended us, but was quick to disinherit Nick when he refused to help her criminal grandson. We've learned a tough lesson. You can give your life for someone, but if that person doesn't want to see your kindness, they never will. We plan to stay out of contact with them for the foreseeable future. Despite all the problems, we will continue appreciating our good relationship with ABA, who has always been nothing but loving and grateful to us. Update 3. It's been a while since I last updated my story, and I wanted to share how things have been over the past 2 years. I've received many messages of support, advice, and even some criticism, but I'm grateful for everything that has been shared with me. Sometimes sharing our experiences allows us to see the situation from a different perspective. These 2 years have been full of changes, and while the situation with some family members is still complicated, there are others who continue to be a light in our lives. I know my last update ended on a rather dramatic note, but time has allowed many things to settle, even if it hasn't been in the most conventional way. ABA is still that wonderful exception that proves not all the decisions we made were in vain. She's been traveling for work recently, but she came to visit not long ago, and it was a joy to have her at home. She always surprises me with how loving, polite, and grateful she is. Over this time, many people have told me in the comments that perhaps I shouldn't have gotten so involved with my sister-in-law's children, that it would have saved me a lot of headaches. And while they're mostly right, ABA is the exception that shows it was worth it. Every time I see how her professional and personal life has flourished, I feel proud to have been part of her journey. During her last visit, ABA confided in me that if she ever decides to get married, she wants me to be her maid of honor and Nick to walk her down the aisle. I was deeply touched by this, even though she doesn't have any concrete wedding plans yet. She did tell me she's seeing someone, though she didn't want to go into too many details, but she seems happy, and that's the most important thing. She is a testament to the fact that sometimes investing in the right people can be the most rewarding thing in the world. Rasten, on the other hand, has had a much harder path. After everything that happened, he ended up working in a mechanic shop. It's an honest job, and I'm glad he found something that gives him stability, but I can't help but think about how things could have been different if he had made other choices. After his run-in with the law, his educational opportunities evaporated. Even if he had managed to get money for university, which I don't think would have been possible given his family's financial situation, it's unlikely any institution would have accepted him because of his criminal record. In fact, the university that had initially accepted him before everything blew up revoked his admission once they found out about his past. It's sad to see how drastically his future changed, but at least he's managed to find a way to move forward. We haven't had direct contact with him, but I know from others that he hasn't had any more legal issues. As for Ross, his situation is a bit more bleak. He's still serving his sentence and has several years ahead of him before he's eligible for parole. The last I heard, he had been studying in prison. While the circumstances are terrible, I take some comfort in knowing that he's at least trying to improve himself academically. I always thought Ross had potential, but he got lost along the way, seduced by easy money and bad influences. I don't want him back in our lives, but I genuinely hope that this time will help him find his way. Maybe when he gets out, he can find a way to rebuild his life away from crime and bad decisions. After all, I believe no one is completely lost, and I hope he can do something positive with his future. As for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I don't have much updated information. I know they've tried to contact Nick several times, claiming they want to repair the relationship, but Nick wants nothing to do with them. He made the decision to cut all ties, and to this day he remains firm in that stance. My mother-in-law has apparently insisted several times that we should be the family we once were, but the reality is that idealized family she remembers never existed. There was always an underlying layer of manipulation and unfair expectations. On the other hand, my sister-in-law has tried the same with sporadic attempts to reach out, but Nick has always been very clear that he doesn't want to get involved with her or her children again. For him, the relationship ended the day all the lies and the damage that his own mother and sister were willing to cause to defend the indefensible became clear. We will continue to maintain our relationship with ABA, who is the only one who has always shown gratitude and love toward us. My husband lies about his past with his girl best friend and his porn relapses. I, 34/F, will start this from the very beginning of our 3.5-year relationship. My husband, 28/M, and I met in August 2019, We started as coworkers, and then we became friends, though we clearly had an interest in each other. I was just working my way out of an abusive relationship that ended January 2020, and he was single. We would have amazing conversations on love, relationships and friendships, and more. We made things clear as to what we were looking for in a relationship, and we definitely took things slow before becoming exclusive in 2021. He told me that he has a childhood best friend, 29/F, and I thought nothing of it because I have male friends as well. We had a conversation about how people are suspicious about male-female friendships with good reason and sometimes with no reason at all. I explained that there are people in those types of friendships who are not worth trusting, but some people are actually real friends. Real friends are not sexual with each other. I also told him that I'm okay with your friend, as long as you are honest about your intentions or your past with her. I also made it clear to him that I don't want to be in a love triangle when you can simply be with her. He told me that they went together in middle school, and it was nothing more than that. That was no big deal to me because that was middle school, and we are all grown now, late 20s, early 30s. I thought we had an understanding, and everything was fine between the three of us. Fast forward approximately 2 years later, 2023. We are married. His best friend helps fund our wedding and honeymoon. I think she is amazing and is so sweet and supportive. Everything is amazing at first. I go on Facebook and I comment something nice on a picture that his friend posted just before my husband and got together, and immediately noticed a comment/meme from my husband asking if he can turn her guts into jello and an *T in her. I was shook and afraid to confront him about it, but I did it. He told me that the post was an accident and that I had nothing to worry about. He couldn't really keep his story straight. He was obviously nervous himself but tried to play it cool. I didn't really know what to believe, so I just moved on from it. A little more about him and our relationship. Now I must say that this man is a very kind, hardworking and supportive husband, father and friend. He takes good care of me and our son. I don't think he's cheating, but I know he is lying. I've caught him in many lies. He was open about his porn addiction before we got married, and I never actually saw it as a problem. I watched porn too, until he taught me more about it. Since he expressed how important it was to overcome this addiction, I've been willing to support him in every way I can. So I became his accountability buddy. The problem is that he lies every time he has a relapse. That's what hurts. I'm not hard on him when he has a relapse. I actually cut him some slack, but I definitely get upset when he lies about it. I hate the lies the most. I'm like, come on now, I know you're embarrassed, but stop lying to me. I ask him, why do you want me to care if you're just going to lie about it? How can I do my job and hold you accountable if you lie? He never has an answer. This has been happening just about every month this year, and I'm tired of it. In July 2024, I got a notification from the No Porn app seeing something regarding a mistress in his notes. I asked him about it, and he told me that I could check it out for myself. Turns out it was a poem about a woman, his best friend. It sounded like. I asked him about it, and he claims he doesn't know what that was about and that he used to write a lot of crazy poems. I thought that was weird, but I let it go. I also stumbled upon an old note to his best friend, confessing his love for her before we got together. I asked him about that too, and he said that was a really old note he wrote when he was desperate and single, and he no longer has those feelings. He swears that he is only in love with me, that there's nothing to worry about, blah blah. Fast forward December 7th, 2024, I received another notification about boobs in Messenger. He offers me his phone to check for myself because once again he doesn't know what I'm talking about. I didn't find the boob comment, but I did find pictures of his best friend naked and saw that same meme from before asking to turn her guts into jello and an *T inside her. Now I'm sure that the pictures were sent before we got together, but he told me they did not have an intimate relationship and that the comment under her post was an accident and that I had nothing to worry about, all of which were lies. I had no problem being open and honest about my past relationships, so there was nothing but air and opportunity for him to be honest with me when I asked him in the beginning. I keep showing him how I'm willing to work on certain issues and how open I am to have the hard conversations as long as you're honest. Yet, it seems like most things, if not everything, is a lie. I feel hurt. It's hard to even look at him right now. I'm disgusted. His best friend is supposed to be my friend too. She calls me her sister. But she is naked **** and T****TTY pictures in his phone. So I'm questioning everything. I don't think I could even look at her the same way. I feel so stupid supporting them in the issues they had in their friendship and comforting him as she leaves the country frequently. I feel like I've been pushing them together the whole time. I could only imagine what they have actually done with each other. His best friend also just got married, and my insecurities are telling me that he probably wishes that was him instead. By the way, he does not know that I have seen those pictures yet. I plan to let him know, but I want to tell him when I'm in a better headspace. I am too emotional, disgusted, and angry with him right now, and I don't want to be disrespectful. TLDR, my husband keeps lying about his relapses and his past relationship with his best friend. He has told me on numerous occasions that I have nothing to worry about when it comes to his best friend, but I've seen old love notes, poems, explicit comments, nudes, and a ton of porn. No matter how many times I confront him on things like this, the rabbit hole seems to run deeper with each incident. I want us to work, but he definitely broke my trust. At this point, it is hard to believe anything that comes out of his mouth. Any advice on how I should go about letting him know what I saw? How can I get him to simply be honest? Edited some typos * and clarity. I never asked to see his phone, by the way. He offers it to me and tells me to look for myself. I know he isn't cheating on me with her. She works abroad and comes home 2-3x a year. However, I do know that he has constantly lied to me about his past with her. I wouldn't be surprised if he was still in love with her even though she is newly married too. From a women's perspective, what could my 33M, old friend, 34F, be thinking? I had a best friend. We are both in our 30s and we met around 3 years ago. We had a toxic friendship, but also an amazing one. We both are introverts and never really been anywhere. After meeting her, for both of us things just clicked. Next thing you know, we're going on adventures and doing things we never imagined. We like theme parks, and in just a few months we went to Orlando at Disney and Universal. We went to Tampa, San Antonio, and Atlanta. We did so much, it was amazing. Some background. She was 31 when I met her and had never gone anywhere except to pay bills, run errands, etc., and she has never been in any relationship. I was 30 at the time and also have never been in a relationship. So as you can expect, our friendship didn't have the maturity it needed. Fast forward a little bit and I had started to develop feelings. If you're still reading this, you probably was expecting this. She wanted only to remain friends, but everything we were doing was like a couple. Think this was more of the fact we just didn't know better. But she admits also she is fearful avoidant, and I was thinking maybe that with ambivalence? So it was toxic, in that I became jealous and manipulative while she was angry and insulting. But she always was comfortable with me. She wants someone who gets her and doesn't want to feel alone in this world. Over the course of these few years, we would end it then be right back together, again toxic. But recently, in March, I guess she really had enough. We haven't been anywhere together since then. Now when I ask, she tells me no, it wouldn't be good. I ask her why, and she says she doesn't want to relive the past. That she's single and happy now, and I didn't realize I was bringing her such stress. Her mother states like her going back in her shell. IDK if this is of any importance, but she pays attention to this kind of stuff, that she is an ISFP and fearful or anxious avoidant and also Gemini. When she had me take the test, I was INFP and ENFP, and anxious attachment and Scorpio. This last part is only to inform because this is what she follows. And every time I see her in public, she is the same warm girl as far as like gestures go. Like I can be touchy-feely with her. Always was, and she didn't mind from me but only from me, and she would be laughing and happy. Like, trying to contact her, it would be cold, and even her family would want to see me but be like she said no. But when I would talk with her whenever I'd see her, she'd always go back to friend mode per se, and I feel as she is forcing herself to not give in to a friendship. Because like I said, when we talk it's like we never stopped and she goes on rambling, but she says no when I try to get in contact with her and wants me to go away. Almost like two different people. My main reason for coming here is to get guidance on this issue. I'm not here to bash because I've done a lot of wrong. I am just seeking from other women, what might she be thinking? Why is she like, let go and move on and not responding, saying she wants to move on, but at the same time it's like it never stopped when we see each other in public? TLDR, what may could be going through my old friend's head, and what can I do or sure do going forward? I, 23M, am not sure how to proceed with my GF, 22F. I, 23M, am not sure whether to keep being in a relationship with my GF, 22F. Hey everyone. First and foremost, sorry for any spelling errors or bad grammar in advance. I intend to make this post as coherent as possible as it's a lot to unpack. I'll try to summarize. My GF, 22F, and I, 23M, have been together for 1 year and 2 months as of now. We've broken up twice in the span of the relationship. I'm from the USA and she's an international student from Colombia. First breakup, the first time was because I found messages on her phone doubting in being me due to conflicting views on marriage. She was pro-marriage and I wasn't, but I still want to be with just one person. And FYI, she doesn't care if have a wedding ceremony nor a ring, and I did agree to marry her so she can get papers before then. It was a huge deal breaker for her my views on marriage. Got mad/disappointed and told her friend. The friend talked bad about me and my GF didn't seem to care. She then said to her friend that she was 50-50 on staying with me. Mind you, she's been in a crappy financial situation since I met her. Her car broke down so she had to Uber everywhere so we couldn't see each other on a midpoint, and sometimes I even gave her rides. We lived 1 hour away. She got very sick and helped her pay for her medicine and tests. I only was doing side gigs during the weekend so money was limited for me, and obviously tried to show the best version of myself while being kind, loving, and understanding. And she broke the trust bond we formed by lying about certain stuff. I would ask a question about something and she would say the opposite, like lying about a friend of hers that ended up being her ex and still being in contact with him, and being in contact with a coworker she was crushing on right before meeting me. She was still in contact with the guy and would delete their Insta convos with me as her BF sketchy emo. That lastly broke things off the first time around, but we talked it out. She said that she lied about the stuff I stated because she didn't want me to think the wrong way, and said that she was just mad when she was doubting in being with me, so she didn't really mean it. Second breakup, to summarize, I was in a very good paying job out of state where I would have been away for months at a time, leaving me with no time to be with my GF. I talked about the possibility of having our own house and land, but she still stated that she didn't like me working there. I decided to leave that job so I could be with my GF and told her before quitting that I could make money elsewhere. I'm back home, and I found out that she's disappointed in me for leaving. She stated that she's scared for the future, mainly because the dream of having the house wouldn't come true like I planned. She stated I only do half promises, and is waiting for me to actually do what I tell her I'm gonna do. I left a job where, with no experience nor school, was gonna get me 100K plus. I was furious and I told her I'm not sure whether I can continue with the relationship, as she is not seeing a left behind the golden ticket for her. She got mad of my comments and told her mom, and I managed to see the convo she had. The mom was insulting me and telling her stuff like, "He doesn't love you. If he really loved you, he would have blindly married you." AMO. That's dumb as hell, but my GF agreed with her and said stuff like, "You right, I just need to focus on myself." And, to put the cherry on top, the mom accused me of doing psychological violence. And my GF agreed with her. Due to her financial situation, she stayed with me at my parents' house for 8 months, 5 in which were free. I kicked her out the house, but keep in mind that she already had a room to go to, so I wasn't kicking her out the street with nowhere to go. I packed her stuff in bags, garbage bags, because I didn't have anything else to put her stuff, and it was more practical having everything in bags to make the moving process easier. To keep things short in the conclusion, we decided to give each other a week break. No contact with few exceptions like emergencies, etc. But she didn't respect it because she missed me and would send messages. We talked and decided to give each other another chance. She mentioned about going to the army so she can get her papers, even though that meant that she would break up. We talked about this possibility before. She saw it as a win/win situation if she went to the army, which is very understandable. But what bothers me is that I left a very good paying job to be with her while she would leave me so she can get her papers and school paid it off. I mentioned how that was unfair because I left the golden ticket behind, but she just got mad at me and said she wouldn't leave me to go to the army, which I call BS to be honest. I don't feel happy being in this relationship, but I do love her. But I don't trust her, nor she trusts me. This is my question. How do I go proceed with this relationship as I'm torn between breaking up with her and staying? I, 35F, have been seeing my unofficial boyfriend Tim, 38M, for about a year TLDR. I, 35F, have been seeing my unofficial boyfriend Tim, 38M, for about a year. He's amazing, loving, thoughtful, emotionally available, and great in every way, but I'm feeling conflicted. Part of me wants to commit, but another part of me feels the urge to explore the dating scene and have fun since I never got to do that before. I also find myself nitpicking small things about Tim and questioning my attraction to him. Even though we have great chemistry and fun together, how do I balance wanting something serious with the urge to explore and date around? I, 35F, am in a bit of a confusing situation with my unofficial boyfriend, 38M. We'll call him Tim, and I'm hoping to get some perspective. I have been separated, finalizing divorce, from my husband for a couple of years now, and in that time, I've been seeing Tim, who has honestly been everything I could want in a partner. He's loving, thoughtful, treats me like a queen, satisfies me in every way possible, and really checks off all the boxes. We've been seeing each other for about a year now, and I can genuinely say he's amazing. With that being said, I'm feeling conflicted and confused. Part of me knows that Tim is great for me. He calms me down, understands me, he's emotionally available to me. Yet, another part of me feels like I shouldn't be looking for another serious relationship yet and need to explore more, date around, sleep around, or just enjoy being single for a while. I want to experience the dating scene and just have some fun. I had been with my husband for a long time and didn't have any prior time to have fun. With Tim, I have developed this tendency to let small things, i.e. his haircut, or the fact that he's a lot taller than I am, bother me, small things that make me question whether I want to continue to be in relationship with Tim or if I'm just scared of fully committing or whether I'm just settling. It's not that he's done anything wrong. It's just that I'm struggling with what I truly want. I often find myself convincing myself that I am not attracted to him, but we have amazing sexual chemistry, something that my ex-husband lacked, and I do find his personality very attractive. I feel that I'm very comfortable with him and he's the real deal, but part of me at times feels no excitement or those feelings towards Tim, and I don't know if it's because he's drama-free and I'm used to chaos in my previous relationships. We have a lot of fun together and he is very considerate and loving towards me, hence why I feel torn between being with someone who is incredible and ready for a future with me and is everything that I look for in a life partner, and the desire to keep my options open and see what else is out there. Selfishly, I would like to continue on with Tim while dating, but I know he would not be open to that. I am also at the age where my biological clock is ticking. Has anyone else gone through something similar? How do you balance wanting something serious with the urge to keep exploring and dating before settling down again? I would really appreciate any advice or stories from people who've been in a similar situation. I'm F31, and the guy I'm dating is M37. I'm starting to feel strung along after 2.5 months of dating. I'm F31, and the guy I'm dating is M37. I'm starting to feel strung along after 2.5 months of dating. First of all, things have been great. We have so much fun together, and he treats me better than any guy has. When we are together, everything feels great. But lately I'm starting to feel strung along since he hasn't formally asked me to be his girlfriend. Initially, I was hard-lined on 2 months. I felt that was more than enough time. But then, a few days before the 2-month mark hit, he did something really sweet and helpful for me. After that, I softened my position about 2 months and extended the artificial deadline in my head to 3 months. That way I could give him a Christmas gift either way. Generally, I don't buy gifts for people I'm not exclusive with, but in this case, I know I'd regret not buying him something at the very least to say thank you, even if he gets me nothing in return. But now it's 2.5 months in. I see the holidays approaching, and I'd love to include him in my plans and at least offer to spend parts of the holidays together, but I don't feel comfortable doing that if we're not official. I've kind of made up my mind to end us going on dates if we aren't explicitly exclusive by the new year. That's like 3 months and change. I'll probably give him 3.5 months total just because I don't want to have to break up with someone right in the middle of the holidays. I guess my overall questions is whether this is unreasonable. It feels unfair to break up with someone without giving them a chance to correct something. But at the same time, I don't want someone to begrudgingly agree to be my boyfriend because I'll leave them otherwise. I want someone to want to be enthusiastic enough about me to proactively ask when they feel ready, and to be on roughly the same timeline about that. I guess it feels like a choice between good communication, telling him what I want, and dragging someone into a relationship reluctantly, because he wouldn't ask unless he feared losing me. And I have communicated similar things, that I was looking for an exclusive relationship and only interested in monogamy, and that my perspective on dating was that it was like tryouts for an exclusive relationship, and that I don't date people unless we both see potential and are looking for something exclusive after getting to know each other. I just haven't communicated exact dates. What do you think? Should a guy automatically ask you to be his girlfriend when he feels ready, or is it my responsibility to tell him he should? A question from my girlfriend, F24. Makes me, M23, think she may have caused sexual trauma. I feel really lost and don't know if I can heal in this relationship. Looking for advice? My girlfriend, F24, and I am 23, have been together for 2 years. For the most part, our relationship has been wonderful. She's pretty, funny, successful, and we're both very close to each other's families. Everything aside from our sex life feels really great. However, there have been a few incidents that I can't stop thinking about, and I'm unsure how to move forward. We both deal with mental health challenges. She has OCD, and I struggle with social anxiety and depression. Recently, she asked me if she may have sexually traumatized me due to an incident in our relationship. Her question caught me off guard. I told her I wasn't sure and had never really thought about it, but I didn't think so. Since then, my thoughts have been spiraling, and I don't know if I have been traumatized or not, and if I have been, should I stay? For context, during the first year of our relationship, she frequently shared her strong dislike of pornography and the harm she believes it causes. I lied to her and said I had stopped watching porn, knowing it was wrong. When she found porn on my phone, she was devastated. She spent days questioning me, why I watched it, why I lied, if I even found her attractive. She almost pressured me into admitting I loved lusting after other women, which wasn't true but felt like something I had to say to make it stop. This deeply affected me because I already have issues with disappointing others and beating myself up over mistakes. However, I knew that its effect on me was not as important as I had done something extremely wrong to her. Around this time, our sex life started to dwindle, and it's been inconsistent since. We have some stretches where we are very active, followed by dry spells. Later, while struggling with her OCD, over the course of a few weeks, she confessed to all the bad things she'd ever done because of a compulsion. Most of it wasn't even bad, but she admitted that before I was caught watching porn, she had been watching it herself. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, it felt hypocritical, but I also understood she was dealing with her mental health at the time. I forgave her and was not mad at her, but later expressed that it did hurt how she had questioned me for days and how I felt awful from the experience. Recently, our sex life has become nearly non-existent. I often feel intense guilt about my own pleasure and can't even masturbate without feeling like I'm doing something wrong. I wonder if this guilt stems from the porn incident. I also get scared of disappointing her sexually. She is the main driver of sex in the relationship, and often I am not in the mood. When she asked if she had traumatized me, I started to question everything. Am I holding on to resentment from that time? Is that why I struggle with guilt and intimacy? I want a healthy, happy sex life, but I'm unsure if I can heal while staying in this relationship. At the same time, her OCD often causes overwhelming anxiety, and I worry about what would happen if I left her. She's told me multiple times that she'd have nobody without me, and she wouldn't know what to do. Anytime we have a conversation in which you could imply there was some doubt about our relationship, she has what seems like a panic attack and gets really scared. We've talked about marriage and starting a family, but I'm scared and confused. I love her, and she loves me. She is the only girlfriend I have had, but I don't know what to do. Can I heal with her? Or is this something I need to figure out on my own? How do I make the right choice for both of us? I am scared that breaking up with her would be throwing away the only love I've ever known. I am going to talk to my therapist soon, but I just am feeling super lost. I don't even know how to tell her I have been having these thoughts without scaring her badly. What do I do? Am I even sexually traumatized? Looking for taking things slow experiences TLDR. I, 47F, have been exclusive with my guy, 40M, for 3 months. We see each other often, do tons of activities together, and everything has been amazing. Recently, a conversation about labels, boyfriend/girlfriend, left me feeling uncertain. He's happy with what we're doing and doesn't need a title, but I've realized the label matters to me as a symbol of commitment. His actions show he's fully invested, but I'm struggling with my own insecurities and past experiences. I'd love to hear from people who've had slow starts that led to healthy, long-term relationships to help ease my anxiety and get back to enjoying what we have. Red Heart I, 47F, and my guy, 40M, have been exclusive for 3 months. My situation is divorced from a 22-year marriage with 4 middle school age to adult children. He divorced younger than I did, subsequently has had 1 or 2 LTR, including a 5-year relationship where they lived together. He has a now teenage daughter, and part of the demise of the relationship was that the ex and her daughter were unkind to his daughter. We do a ton together, see each other 3 to 5 days a week, overnights 2 to 4 nights a week depending on schedules. We ski/snowboard, mountain bike, hike, camp, and we also grocery shop or hang out on the couch and do nothing. He has mentioned previously taking things slow, and I gather it's due to his past, other traumas as well, that I can completely understand would make someone guarded. Recently, he came to my company Christmas party with me. We had the best time. Afterward, a colleague had commented to me that they liked my boyfriend, and I mentioned this to my guy. I teasingly asked if I should have corrected my colleague about the use of the word boyfriend. He said that I could call him anything I wanted, but that he didn't need a title to enjoy my company. This actually threw me a bit because I feel like everything we do together is boyfriend and girlfriend, and I told him I needed a little time to process my thoughts. When I got back to him and I told him that I felt like I had sorted things out, he seemed apprehensive. He said something to the effect of, "All good, right?" I told him what the titles meant to me, which really were just about commitment to exploring the growing relationship, that it didn't really add any other obligations or pressure. I told him that I would be extremely happy and more confident if he considered me his girlfriend. I unfortunately also negated that by saying I would be okay if he didn't. And finally, I told him that some of my reaction may be related to a previous relationship of mine where a guy had been previously engaged, and I thought that was the trajectory he wanted with me. Turned out he only wanted casual and his freedom, and I found out after I was too invested. But he'd been quick to label, and it turned out he was also full of shit. My guy responded that he is neither quick to label nor full of shit, and that he is happy with what we are doing together. That's kind of where the conversation ended. The thing is, I was so happy prior to having this stupid conversation. Everything was just so great. I honestly couldn't ask for more in a partner. Suddenly, I've been thrown into a tailspin simply because he doesn't want to call me his girlfriend. I don't want this to change how I interact with him, but it's definitely been making me sad. It makes me question what we're doing. The strange thing is his actions 100% point towards his commitment to me and our relationship. He's never done a thing to make me doubt him. So why does the label matter to me? I'm used to jumping in with both feet, moving too fast, lighting a fire and watching it burn. I have a relationship therapist, and she has reassured me that every little detail she knows about our relationship, which is essentially all of it, points towards nothing other than healthy growth. I'm just not used to this pace, and of course a lot of people have told me, he's just not that into you, and basically that I should end it. I absolutely don't want to, but my anxiety is getting the best of me, and I would love to hear from others who have had slow starts that led to long-term fulfilling relationships so that I can get out of my own head and back to where I was just a few days ago. Thank you. Red Heart. My husband, 32M, and I, 28F, have different communication styles. How do you manage that during stressful times, and is it a deal breaker? Me, 28F, and my husband, 32M, have different communication styles. How do you manage this during a stressful time? Can we work through it, or is it a deal breaker? We have been together for 4 years, married for 1. This is the first time that we have a period during which we are both experiencing a lot of stress. I am finishing a PhD, I have a new job, and I am looking for another job post-graduation. I am also studying for my driving license, which can be tricky here in Europe. My husband is dealing with a visa situation. He is starting a business and working long hours in another part of the country. The living situation is also complicated, with a lot of moving around, and we still don't have a place together at the minute. Basically, a lot of good change, but stressful. The way I deal with stress is that whenever we talk on the phone, usually about 20 minutes every day in the evening, I want to talk about things that make me forget daily life for a bit and make me feel relaxed. It can be about anything like a song, a film, a show, someone I met, a nice house I saw. For him, when he is stressed, he can only think about those things, and it's difficult to have a conversation with him. He rarely asks how my day went, and doesn't listen when I offer the information myself. He will answer something that is totally unrelated, or that shows he isn't listening. I've told him that we need to prioritize relaxing time together even, and especially when life gets hard, because otherwise we might become distant, and all the things we are working towards will be for an empty relationship. He understands, but that's how he has always been, in survival mode, so it's very difficult to change that. His love language is touch and acts of service. Mine is touch and quality time together. I, 19F, rejected to make out with my guy friend, 19M, and now I'm confused about our friendship TLDR. He tried to kiss me on a party because he misinterpreted my displays of affection as something else, and I rejected it. We're acting like nothing happened, but I'm confused as to why he wanted to do that. English is not my first language. I've 19F known this guy, 19M, since we were around 16 in a group therapy. Always thought he was kinda cute, but not really my type because of some attitudes that I don't really like. He started texting me at that age, and we had this dynamic where he would text me something and reply like 3 days later. I didn't really care because we all were in that therapy group because of issues with socialization, and he was nice. I developed a tiny crush on him for a while, but it vanished when he got a GF. We continued that texting dynamic until we got into the same college this year, so I could see him in real life more frequently. Making friends has always been very hard for me, so for a long time he was my only friend in there. After we started university, I noticed some changes in him. He BR0 co-op W his GF last year, by the way. Like, he's been going more to parties and making out with girls, etc. He's very good looking, so I think he realized his potential or something. I was kind of surprised about that because I met him in a moment of his life where he was the complete opposite of that, but well, people grow up and change, I guess. The thing is that yesterday we went to a party organized by a friend we have in common. I'm a person who shows affection to my friends through physical contact, and lately I've felt like we've become closer, so I was very touchy, only in the shoulder zone. I know how this sounds, but trust me when I say I don't like him. The thing is that socializing, it's so hard for me. I have social anxiety and autism, that I only hang out with gay men and women because it's what makes me more comfortable. I'm used to hugging my friends, caressing them, leaning on their shoulders, etc. This guy is literally my only straight man friend, and the fact that I don't really interact with them, straight men, made me realize how naive I am and how little I know about other people. I literally just understood today why men keep asking me to go to more private places at parties. I always thought they asked that because they wanted to talk in a quiet place or something. I thought I could treat him like any other friend I have, but no, he's different, and I know I made a mistake. But going back to the story, I got more touchy with some touches on his shoulder and wrapping my arm around his neck. There was a moment when I was talking to a girl and started resting my head on his lap. I know it sounds weird, but I do that with all my friends as a display of affection, and they never misinterpreted it. So he started resting his arm on my head, and it was a nice sensation. I love to bond like that with my friends. But then his hands started going lower on my back and then on my waist. I wasn't sure what it meant, but I thought it was normal since I thought he was only displaying his affection back. God, I'm so stupid. I'm sorry. I'm sure you're reading this thinking that it was obvious, but I've always been clueless with these things. I don't have any experience with relationships outside of friendship, so I really wasn't able to understand what he was doing. After that, we went to the terrace and started talking to a girl and random guy, and I wrapped my arm around his neck again, and he pulled me closer by placing his hand on my waist. Sorry, I'm so embarrassing. I know it was obvious, but I do that all the time with my girlfriends, so I thought it didn't mean anything. So after a while he leaned closer and told me something like, "Hey, wanna go there?" Like he wanted to move to a more isolated place, and I was confused because we were talking to these people and I didn't know why he would want to go away. So I asked him, "Where?" And he gestured the place again. I was so lost. I literally wasn't getting the hint yet, and I thought he meant he wanted to go back inside. He said it again. He wanted us to move to a more private spot, and then, only then, I finally realized what was happening. I obviously wasn't interested in something like that, so I told him, "No, I want to keep chatting," and we continued the conversation with the other two. After that, some of his friends were teasing him and joking. Then I said something like, "I think you're G4Y, disclaimer. I'm a part of the LGBTQ plus community, and we say this thing between friends sarcastically, never in a hateful way." But then he pulled me closer again and whispered to my ear, "You think I would be holding you by the waist if I was gay?" And that felt so weird because I've never seen his flirty side. I always thought he saw me as another male friend or something. So the thing is that I yelled an expression we use in my country that doesn't have a direct translation, but it's something close to "stop being dramatic," as a joke. But then he leaned closer to me and I pushed his face away, saying, "No. I know I should have just pulled away, but I guess I was in denial. I didn't want to stop holding him because he's still my friend, and I'm sure him wanting to make out doesn't mean anything to him." We ignored what happened for the rest of the night, and he went home first. I was so confused because I really was so sure that he never would see me that way that I felt safe being touchy. I trusted him enough to assume he wouldn't misinterpret it. I know some people make out with their friends, and I think that's fine, but it's just not for me. I found out that I do feel a physical attraction towards him, but is only that, and I don't feel able to reach such level of intimacy with someone who I don't like romantically, just for fun. And I'm sure he doesn't feel that way either, romantically attracted to me. He was just kind of turned on and wanted to make out like he does with other girls. Again, I know I fucked up, but I just feel like I'm still in denial with the fact that the only straight man who I was comfortable with turned out to want something like that. I'm not shaming him or anything. I can't control people's urges. It's natural, but I'm just disappointed that it happened. I know my signals were confusing. I didn't realize they were, and I definitely made a big mistake by treating him like I treat other friends. I'm writing this because I really wanted to know if I should bring it up in a conversation or act like nothing happened. The fact that he sorta gave in so easily means that he wanted it since before? I know I sound stupid, but I'm so unexperienced in so many things that I really need some insight. Please be nice. I'm genuinely so confused and I just want answers. Thanks for reading. My boyfriend crossed a boundary of mine, and I'm not sure if I can move on or if I need to let it go. My boyfriend, 32M, and I, 28F, have been dating for about 8 months. We met on the apps but instantly connected like we were meant to be together and would be for the rest of our lives. We've been able to work through every issue that's come our way. There have been plenty, respectfully and with solid communication. However, I've reached an issue that I'm not sure if I can move on from. He went to an event recently, and when he posted something about it on socials, it said something about adult entrainment on there. When I asked him what it was, he was unsure. It wasn't his event or his flyer. I told him I sure hope it's not strippers because you know how I feel about that, and I would 100% expect you to leave if that's the case. I texted him good night before I went to bed and also asked what the adult entertainment was. He texted me letting me know he made it home around 1 a.m. but didn't answer my question about the entertainment. Sure, fine. I get that, and we could talk about it when we had some time to chat on the phone the next day. We talk on the phone throughout the day, every day, as we live a couple hours away from each other. The next evening, when I remembered about it again, I asked what the adult entertainment was, and he called me, but I didn't answer because I was getting ready for bed, and once I called him back, I asked why he's ignoring my question, and he said I'm not. I wanted to call you, and he confirmed there were strippers there. I asked if he stayed, and he said yes, but he didn't associate in any way. I was very hurt and said I can't believe you disregarded my boundary, and said I'm going to bed good night. He then called me 4x back to back. Obviously he felt guilty and was blowing up my texts. I didn't want to associate at all or even hear an explanation because I was very clear a couple of nights prior that I would expect him to leave if there were strippers, and when he said, "What if I don't, 'cause I really can't leave?" I said, "Then you're a single man." I'm not comfortable with the idea of my partner around strippers when I genuinely see a future as husband and wife. It would be different if you were just a man I was casually dating, but we've already had conversations of him moving to where I live and getting married, etc. Anyways, I don't want to be dramatic and say it's over, but I genuinely don't know how to move on from this because he knew what the danger was and chose to ignore it. To provide some color to this, the reason he said he couldn't leave is because he is trying to get into a motorcycle club with these guys, another huge topic of discussion, and it was a big event, and if he left that would be the end of his affiliation with them, wouldn't be acceptable to them. I just feel like he blatantly disregarded my boundary and obviously chose his friends and then just hoped he could explain his way out of it afterwards. I don't want this to be one of those I should have listened when he showed me where he stood lessons. It is just complicated because I have a kid and my BF has been closely involved in his life and has been really, really good for us both. Is there a way forward for us? Best friend is controlling. Hi everybody. My 22F best friend, 22F, is extremely controlling. She has admitted to struggling with boundaries, jealousy, and comparing herself to others, which I understand. However, sometimes she takes this out on me and I genuinely struggle to be on the same page as her. A few weeks ago, she organized a dinner and one of her friends who lives 3 hours away from us didn't come. She was very disappointed, but I didn't really understand why. It was in the middle of a snowstorm and her friend has never been to our city. For Christmas, she is organizing another dinner. I unfortunately have to work that night. I am an agent for a musician and my client has been offered a great opportunity which I have known about longer than her dinner. And she completely blew up when I told her, telling me that my decision was not good enough and that I have disappointed her. I knew about my client's upcoming opportunity for over a year, but only realized it was the same night as her dinner recently. I told her that I could take her out for coffee during the day, but she insists she will be spending the entire day preparing for her dinner. The last thing she said to me was that she cannot believe that I am acting like this is nothing and that I was gaslighting her because I told her that she would have a great night with everyone else. I genuinely meant it and she interpreted it as me saying she has no other friends. I offered to call up after my client finishes his appointment, but she insisted that her dinner would be over then. This is not the first time this has happened. I appreciate being treated like family and being included in everything, although my division between family and friends is slightly different. When I graduated, my parents were the only one that celebrated with me. Whereas when she graduated, I had to spend the day with her mom and dad and her. I'm conscious of the fact I'm being mean, but my friend's jealousy has become more and more apparent. Recently, she was seeing a horrible person, 24NB, that I think genuinely destroyed their self-confidence and ruined their concept of trust. I grew up in a loving home and am incredibly privileged for that fact. I have very rarely experienced jealousy. In fact, I have not experienced it since I was a teenager over boys. I organize thousands of events a year through my work, and whenever she cannot make one of them, I don't mind. The concept of giving out to someone and scolding them for not attending something that I invited them to doesn't really make sense to me. The reason I am writing this is because I think my friend should speak to someone about their jealousy. I was so scared to tell her that I could not make her dinner to the point of heart palpitations. My parents are not her biggest fan, particularly my mother, who says that her attitude is extremely immature. I want her to mention to her therapist this situation along with other situations so that they can help her overcome. Some of the things she has told me in the past in relation to friendship has been scarring. That I am not allowed to hang around with certain people. She doesn't understand why I cannot stop talking to certain people that she doesn't even know. That I am not allowed to take her friends. That I am not allowed to be friends with her significant other. That I am not allowed to hang out with the friends she met through me unless she is around, but to name a few. Please give me some advice and also some advice on what I could say in response to her. How do I move forward from this? Please, I need some advice. My girlfriend, 16F, of almost 2 years now, is slowly drifting away from my life. I, 17M, 2 years ago, met this girl who was my cousin sister's friend. Well, I didn't really meet her. My cousin sister introduced me to her on a voice call. From there we exchanged our Instagram. I felt really good because I never really talked to girls outside of my family, but I felt very open and comfortable with her. She had traumas with her past relationship experiences and she would often cry to me about it. I would always comfort her. Be there for her. She would also be there for me whenever I need her. I kind of liked her too. I just loved to hear her talk nonstop. The way she would talk, her attitude, I liked everything about her. A few months go by, we became quite close friends, and then suddenly one day she confessed to me. Since I too liked her, I accepted. Things were going great at the beginning, the usual lovey-dovey stuff, promises, dates, hanging out together, etc. It has been 2 years. Yet nobody knows about our relationship. We didn't have an intimate relationship, because she wanted it after marriage and I respected her opinion. It felt like she was the one. It felt like she was my soulmate. We had similar interests too. Now, my girlfriend has been ignoring me, acting rude, canceling plans last minute, and just not talking to me for days. I even tried visiting her house, but she would ignore me. I tried to talk to her, but she just won't talk to me or just stop ignoring me. It's been about a month or 2 since she's doing it. A few more days go by and she just keeps telling me to leave, and that she doesn't want to continue anymore. She won't say why, just keeps on telling me to leave her. I don't want to leave her 'cause of her past, the times we've spent together. But I have to. She said she doesn't need me anymore. She says she still loves me. She acts so cold to me these days. I just didn't want to leave, but the emotional blackmail she was doing to me, I just couldn't handle that. It's been 2 weeks since we broke up and I just can't get her out of my head. I just don't know how I am supposed to move on from this. Our homes are close by, so I see her very often. We are not in the same school. Please someone give me some sort of advice to move on from this. She left without explanation too. Now I just can't help but blame myself for it all. My 20m semi-long distance boyfriend, 20m, keeps insisting on me to visit him when I'm not sure if I can afford to do so right now. Me and my BF have been together for 2.5 years, but that's pretty irrelevant for this. To give some context, I do not have a car and my boyfriend keeps insisting that because I will have a few days free soon, I should go visit him to a city 4 HRS away by train because he has driven here for me multiple times, so it's not fair I also go visit him. And while I get his point, I would have to pay for the train ticket out of my own pocket while his parents pay for the gas money, and I cook for him whenever he comes, so he barely spends any money on his visits. Normally, I would be able to afford it without much trouble. My parents support my basic needs like rent and food fully. While I'm in college, it's just personal spending that comes from my own pocket. But Christmas is nearing, so I have to buy gifts for not only my boyfriend, but my 2 sisters, my brother, and my uncle, which is a lot of money when I can only work 15 hours a week on basically minimum wage, and I cannot work this week because of finals. Even without the trip, my bank account is already looking like it's going to be empty after I buy the gifts, so I really don't know what to do. On top of that, he has always been the one asking if he can visit. I never asked him to come here. I'm not saying I don't. I really appreciate him visiting, but I don't think it's fair to hold that over my head when he was the one driving here out of his own will. The drive here is around 2 hours usually, so it's a lot shorter plus cheaper because again, no gas money for him. I also want to add that it is not like we never see each other. While we go to college in 2 different cities, we both regularly visit our families in our hometowns for the weekend 2 or 3 times a month without fail, and we always spend at least a full day together, so it's not like it's a rare occasion to see each other or spend time together. We text and call most, if not every day. This is literally just him wanting to show me his college and the city, but I just don't know if I can afford it. But I know that another chance to go visit him will not be here for at least 3 months, so I feel really conflicted because whenever I try to tiptoe around possibly not being able to go, he just gets really sad, and I feel guilty for disappointing him on this again. Especially because I will be leaving the country for around 3 weeks, so he's sad he won't see me for almost a month. He has been asking for me to go visit him for a while, but the timing has just never been right. Should I just suck it up and do my best to budget for all the gifts and make him happy? Please help me. I need advice about a boy I'm dating. So I 24F live alone in a city away from my hometown. This is a tier 2 city and the crowd is not very open-minded. I'm from a bigger city and moved here for work. I met a boy 28M here. He's very cute and handsome and caring. He is 28 and I'm 24. We've been seeing each other without commitment for 2 months now. We are like a couple only. He is a very simple man. He just wants sleep, healthy food and football, and he's happy. Since he is 28, he wants to date to marry. Me, I'm not sure. I came out of a toxic long-term relationship earlier this year and it gave me commitment issues. So I don't know how I can tell someone I'll marry them. Now his background and personality is very different from mine. He's from a small town and is a very traditional person. He is family-oriented and his family's also quite traditional. He told me that after marriage he'd want his parents to live with him and his wife. Now this way sounds shallow, but he's not the sharpest tool in the box. He's street smart and he manages everything well, but he's not book smart. I value book smart and intellect a lot. He doesn't know English properly and I could be a grammar Nazi sometimes. His English gives him the ick. Another thing is him and his family are vegetarian and don't eat spicy. Me, I love spicy and I can't leave chicken for any man. This may not sound important, but over the long term it would be a significant problem since I'd be expected to cook. He wants to have kids in the next 5 years and I've always thought I'd be child-free. Even if I do think about having a child with him, 5 years is just not it because I want to do a PhD in the next 5 years. Out timelines don't match. Now he's a great guy. At the end of the day, I need a person who listens, understands me and cares for me. That boy has been so patient with me. He literally heard and read every single one of my songs for 40 minutes just so he could get to know me better. I have back pain issue and he avoids all the potholes when I'm sitting on his bike. He's open to learning English from me. And he supports my work. He is also handsome and OMG his hands. But sometimes I get embarrassed when I'm with my colleagues and he's there because of the way he acts sometimes and again his English. I'm a doctor and my circle is of highly educated people. He on the other hand has a BCom and MBA from any random college, but I know he's hardworking and has side hustles from which he earns. I am very conflicted about how to go about it because I really like him but how can I go into a relationship that should end in marriage when there are so many mismatches? I'm a city girl and I like to work in big cities. He wants to settle in a tier 2 city after marriage. How do I handle this? Should I break up with him? I have only known him for 2 months, but he's a great guy. I want to know, should I pursue him or not? Should I? 21M? Break up with my girlfriend? 20F? Okay, so in our 1-year relationship, our main subject and recurring fights always seems to be about trust, etc., where I'm upset with how she's acting. For instance, she hang out with her friends and her knew some people and she talked with one of the guys there about work stuff, which I do believe. Later on he got her number and they talked mainly about work stuff, though he did made weird comments which obviously hinted he was into her and she basically brushed it off. Still though, when he invited her over to some friend's house, she said she was with family and friends, which was true, but she failed to mention me. She did come up to me later that night and showed me the texts and all. It sounds arrogant, but if I'm honest, I'm much more good looking than this guy, so it makes me lean more towards the opinion that she had no bad intention but still talked to this guy for a week and didn't mention me, and especially when he wanted to hang out, that was the time to tell him. Also, she tells me he already knew because her friend told his guy friend. But honestly, don't give a fuck, just mad about the behavior. I'll just bring up another instance where I saw she recently liked a shirtless photo of a guy she used to flirt on Instagram. They flirted a few months before we met and seems it was meaningless back then and also now, but I'm confused and just wanted to bring up another example of these sneaky behaviors. Would love your opinion because many of these instances happen and causing recurring fights between us. I'm contemplating if I should break it up or not because she is overall very innocent and very family oriented, but at the same time she feels a bit sneaky with those things. Maybe could be maturity or personality difference too, and honestly she's not the brightest, so maybe she's having a hard time noticing or I'm just justifying things in my head. Because all in all she does have a good heart and I do try to keep that in mind. Also she used to be overweight and have some self-esteem issues which I'm trying to help her, though I'm pretty sure she really likes getting attention, so that could also be a reason. Not attracted to my 21F boyfriend, 23M. Anymore. How to deal with it? So me and my boyfriend, we were friends since the starting semester of our college, and we got into relationship after some time, and we will be completing 2 years soon. At first he was very attentive and emotionally available for me while he was approaching me, but after we got into relationship, he gradually giving me less attention emotionally. Because of that, I agreed to get physical at the very starting of relationship. This was stupid of me, but I thought maybe that will keep him hooked. But there wasn't much difference and the sex was okay too, so I was fine with it. But we had so many fights and I gradually started giving less efforts since a few months because I was emotionally fed up of always giving many efforts all the time and crying for him to talk to me after a fight instead of just ghosting me for 1 or 2 days. Like there was one time when we had a fight and then we didn't talk the whole day. At night I went to college canteen to get something and he saw me and walked past by me without even recognizing my presence. I cried my eyes put that night, and maybe it was somewhere after that I started giving less efforts. But now he puts efforts wanting my time more than usual, telling me to spend time with him, but the problem now is I don't feel attracted to him anymore. I haven't stopped liking him, I like him and I respect our old friendship, but I'm not romantically attracted to him anymore, and also one reason for that can be that we last had sex several months back and it was very awful. I couldn't tell him, but it was just so awful that I have been canceling all the plans he makes since then, giving some or the other reason because I can't tell him the real one. There isn't much time left to complete college, so I'm thinking maybe I'll try to be with him till then and break up after that. I really don't know how to deal with it. I'd rather kill myself than be gay. I can't talk to anyone IRL about this. I'm a lesbian. I've known that for 10 years, since I was 14. I'm only out of the closet to 2 very close friends, who are both praying God will save me from this. My community and religion are both very conservative and very homophobic, and I was taught my whole childhood that being gay was one of the worst things you could be. I spent my teen years doing everything in my power to be straight, but nothing works. Then at 20 I started trying to deconstruct a bit, and made an attempt to convince myself it was okay to be gay. That didn't work either. No matter what I do, or how hard I try, I can't escape this feeling that I'm wrong. I've done a lot of research, enough to logically convince myself that it's possible to be gay and be a Christian. But I just can't make myself believe it. Recently I prayed and prayed for God to just convince me one way or the other, because all this conflict is bringing back a desire for self-harm that I haven't had in years. And then right after that, I sat through a sermon in which the preacher talked about homosexuality and how it's pure evil. How you can lie to yourself and think you're still a Christian, but in the end you'll be sent straight to hell. He used the verse about if your eye causes you to sin, cut it out, and went on to imply that even suicide is better than being gay, as homosexuality goes against the very thing God created us for. It's like one of the ultimate rebellions against God. I can't stop thinking about it. I've been a little suicidal for a long time, but never this bad. I can't live my life like this, constantly feeling like I deserve to suffer, knowing I will never be able to have a relationship, not being able to find someone attractive without immediately spiraling into a panic attack, knowing my friends and family will never accept me like this, and having this feeling deep down that maybe they would be sinning if they did. Sorry for the long rant. I had to get that off my chest. No one in my life will ever hear these thoughts. I took a woman's large order from KFC that she had been waiting over an hour for. I've never told anyone this story, and it's been eating me up ever since it happened. It's 2020. I was 26 years old. I had only been to KFC once in my life as a kid, so I decided, hey, why not try it out as an adult? I get there and the line was ridiculously long, moving at a snail's pace. It's around 7 p.m. I had all night to kill, and I was just fine with sitting in my car waiting. The moment I got in line, I immediately noticed a woman in her car talking on the phone. She was parked on the opposite side, right after the drive-through windows, basically where the employees park. Come to find out, this is where they tell you to wait if your order is backed up. Well, I think it had been 25 minutes of waiting in line before I got to the menu to order. I ordered a small bucket of wings and some sides. Lines still moving at a snail's pace. Eventually I get to the window. They say, "Madam, we're sorry, but we're really backed up and we need you to pull up to a parking spot behind the building and we'll bring your order out." Okay, so I go and park 2 spots down from the woman I saw earlier. She's still on the phone. Looks like an intense conversation. So anyway, I'm sitting there for 30 plus minutes and still no food. I'm thinking, man, I would just leave, but I already paid at the window, so now I have to wait. It hit 45 minutes of just waiting in the parking spot, so I said, okay, they probably forgot about me. I'm just going to drive back around to the window. Mind you, this woman had been waiting for her food before I even got to KFC. The entire time I waited in line, twice, ordered, paid, and while parked for another 45 minutes. I'm honestly probably downplaying the length of time because it was a while. So when I get up to the menu, I say, hey, I was waiting for my food, but it took a while, so I drove back around just checking how much longer. They tell me it's just about ready and ask me to pull up. I get to the window and the woman says, "We are so sorry for the long wait. We added some extra chicken in there for you to make up for it." I go, "Oh, okay. Thanks. Totally worth it, I guess." So I'm handed a large bucket of chicken, then a second bucket, then a bag. And at this point, I'm thinking, wait, there's no way they gave me all this extra food because I waited a while. And then it dawns on me that this was probably the other woman's order. Panic starts to set in and I don't know what to do or say in the moment. She proceeds to hand me another bag. The bags were full of chicken and sides. I'm talking like 5 of each side, mac and cheese, mashed potatoes with gravy, etc., the whole shebang. Tons of food, and now I have all of this food in my car. I'm acting polite, but with a little bit of confusion in my voice, like thinking, oh wow, all of this extra for me? But all I said was, oh okay, thank you very much, and drove away. I kind of played dumb on purpose. As I left, I passed the woman in her car again. She was still talking on the phone. I've always wondered how long it took her to realize her order wasn't coming out. She was probably feeding a large household of people. Probably worked all day and got KFC on her way home to feed her husband and 6 children. I felt like a complete asshole while I ate KFC leftovers for 3 days. I've never told anyone this, but to the woman in the car, I am so sorry. I miss my son. I don't know if I will ever see him again. Everyone says to let him go. I am really struggling. It's been an incredibly rough year for me, and my mentally ill ex-husband took advantage of that by manipulating our son to go live with him because he doesn't want to pay child support. I am pretty sure his new girlfriend has something to do with it. I wonder if she is regretting it because my son is a handful and has mental issues of his own. If I am honest, it's much more peaceful without my son here. But I miss him. It has been me and him for most of his life. When his dad abandoned us, I pushed and pushed for them to have a relationship because he abandoned his other 2 kids, and my son said he would never do that to me. Just about broke my heart. Well, now it is broken. His dad is saying all these crazy allegations and I have to deal with CPS. I get like 5 minutes in front of a judge and I can't afford a lawyer. They start off asking for $6,000. And then it goes up from there. His dad drained our accounts when he left, and it's been like digging out of a financial grave ever since. I use legal aid, but they can't offer advice. Just file responses for me. The judge is an absolute bitch and has no patience. I thought judges would be cool, impartial, level-headed. FML, I was wrong on that. I'm tired of the hearings. I am tired of explaining that his dad is mentally ill while he slanders me. My son won't talk to anyone at this point. He is afraid of his dad, but nobody sees that. Took him 2 days to let him know he had been hit by a car on his bike. Last I heard from him, everything was my fault and I was bad for his mental health. I still show up for his IEP meeting and check in on him and go to all the court hearings and give CPS all the information they need. Meanwhile, his dad is telling everyone I am the mentally ill one, probably on drugs, that got my son taken away. The stories don't add up, but my son is 13. And the police and the judge say he can do whatever he wants. I am sad because my son really thought his dad wanted him to live with him because he loves him and he would finally get his dad's attention and his dad would buy him everything he wants. Instead, he is finding out his dad only cares about money and he is grounded all the time. You can tell he is looking for that male role model and his dad is on a pedestal. I am afraid my son will feel alone and turn to even worse characters and get himself into trouble as he moves through high school. He is very extroverted, but his dad is isolating him because he isolates himself. I know life with me sucked. We're dirt poor. I have fibromyalgia and anemia, so I don't have the energy to do all the activities he wants even if I could afford it. I have to take care of his baby sister now. I know his relationship with his stepdad tanked after he was hospitalized and he hated how much attention that took from me. He needed more patience. We all did. But I love my son with my whole heart and we had a plan. Things were gonna get better. We survived the worst of it. We just need more time. So on December 23rd, I have another hearing where he stops child support because he's told the judge he has 100% custody and shouldn't have to pay back support. Never mind, the orders are temporary and CPS found nothing conclusive, just a bunch of he said, she said bullshit. I am the only one with proof they have mental illness. If the judge cares, because you know mentally ill people can do whatever they want, even at the expense of everyone else. I don't really care about the child support at this point because I only get $200. State takes the rest. I just want to see my son and give him a hug. Doesn't look like I will get my Chrismukkah wish. Broken heart. My family says to stop talking about it, partly because they're hurt too and partly because they say my son has to learn the hard way and I need to move on with my life and think of my daughter. I am trying. Thanks for listening. My girlfriend slapped me after I cried at therapy. I've been attending weekly therapy sessions since September. I've always wanted to go, but after I opened up more about my IG lingering feelings about my assault to my girlfriend, I opened up around the time after I posted my other post on my page. She encouraged me to put more time into therapy. And for the past few months it's been going good. I feel like I'm doing better now, ESP with my feelings. However, something therapy has also done is made me kinda sad at times. I'm still working through it OFC, but I still feel really weak sometimes because I didn't do anything to stop myself from getting hurt. Also the fact that I'm still really soft-spoken. My therapy told me it didn't affect anything regarding my assault, but I just hate it. My sadness kinda caught up to me yesterday. During my session my therapist brought up me accepting it all and I cried. I think that was the first time I cried in like 2 years maybe, not sure TBH. My girlfriend picked me up at the clinic after and my eyes were still red and puffy, so she asked me what happened and I told her about me crying. Literally as soon as I said that, she had this little eye roll. It wasn't obvious but I noticed it. She asked me more about it though and she seemed concerned until I started tearing up a bit again. When she saw me she yelled at me asking what the fuck I was doing and she slapped me on my face, like ROI hardly. She said sorry right after, but afterwards she said she did it because she knew I was stronger than that, that being crying. Also that she was disappointed. I forgave her and she promised to get Korean barbecue with me and to finally let me go surfing for once. And while that's all good, I feel alone again. I thought my girlfriend would always at least be there to comfort me, especially with something like this. She was there when I got assaulted, and she was the one who wanted me to go to therapy in the first place. Like I feel like she'd be there for me the most on this, but now I just feel like she isn't kinda. I made a bad choice in Cambodia and tried a drug I never wanted to take after arriving in Phnom Penh, Cambodia and checking in my hostel. I had a couple nights of fun going out clubbing at a place called Pontoon Club/Vibe Club with 2 rooms. The first room opens at 12 a.m. and stays open till about 3 a.m. when the crowd migrates to the smaller room from 3 a.m. till 8 to 10 a.m. As an American where bars close at 2 a.m. at the latest, I was ready to party and they're all 3 nights of my planned nights to stay in Phnom Penh. The first 2 nights were great. I went home with beautiful women both nights as I had a private room in my hostel. For anyone unaware of Phnom Penh, it is one of the more unsafe cities in SE Asia. It's known for armed robberies, human trafficking, and 2-man motorcycle team phone/purse snatching, which isn't common anywhere else in Cambodia. However, the hostel has multiple organized events around the city, and as long as you're on your toes and aware, most people don't experience these things here. I had also gotten a recommendation for this particular nightclub from a hostel employee. Anyways, night 3 at the club did not go as planned, to say the least. I arrived around 3 to 4 a.m. and noticed the first room already closed. As soon as I get to the second room, which is absolutely packed, I walk to the bar and begin to order a drink. Before I can get my order in, a woman grabs my foot, throws it over her head, like a guy would do with a girl's arm, but with my ankle, and bends over putting her ass right on my dick. The bartender was cracking up watching this happen. She then grabbed me and started making out with me more aggressively than anyone ever has, while I was still trying to make sure I didn't fall from my foot being thrown over my head. I was in shock that a beautiful woman would do this to me without speaking a single word to me, but I was all for it. She spent the next few hours in the club dragging me around by my arm, making out with me very intensely, grabbing my dick and even walking up to random guys with the tank top from my hostel and pretending to kiss them before running away laughing at the last minute. At this point, I thought she was just a freaky girl, so I was obviously on board. I became very drunk over the next 4 to 5 hours until most people had left the club and we decided to go home. This was when things took an unexpected turn. We walk out of the club. I am about to call a grab bike, the equivalent of an Uber in SE Asia, but on a motorcycle. The girl insists she has a friend that will take us back for cheaper, so in my drunken state I figured whatever, the worst case scenario is the ride will be $2 versus $1. On the way home I noticed the girl high-five someone on the road, or so I thought. This will make sense later. We arrived back at my hostel around 9:30 a.m. and, as opposed to my previous 2 nights bringing girls back where I was not questioned at all and only asked for the girl's ID at reception, the guard at the door looks me straight in the eyes and goes, "What are you guys doing here?" The girl speaks some Khmer, Cambodian language, to the guard that I can't understand, and explains to me she has family that's involved in the hostel, so people recognize her. I felt I may have angered some relative of hers, but didn't see this getting me into any serious trouble. Plus I was very drunk and not using good judgment. We get let through into the hostel, go to my room, which is when things get interesting. The girl immediately gets naked, essentially rips my clothes off and throws me on the bed. Then she pulls out a baggie while I'm not looking and I go, "Whoa, what is that?" Quick background on me: I have used recreational drugs in the past, including cocaine, ketamine, and MDMA/ecstasy, so I know what they look like and their general effects. I never intended on doing any of these on my trip to Asia, for obvious reasons. The girl keeps telling me, "It's very clean, don't worry." I refused at first and told her I don't take anything without testing it. She pulled out a fentanyl strip and tested it in front of me, which was a big surprise, but she basically already had it all dumped onto her phone in lines. At this point, I began thinking with the wrong head and drunken decisions/horniness took over. I took the tiniest line of what I thought was ecstasy. After a few minutes, I didn't feel at all like I had in the past on MDMA. Sex was absolutely not possible as my dick had gone out of commission, which is the opposite of what should happen with ecstasy/MDMA. At that point, I asked her if she's sure this was ecstasy. She goes, "Oh no, not ice." That was the moment I realized how much I had fucked up. A thick accent had made me hear when she said, "Ice. Meth." I had a ferry ride to a remote Cambodian island in literally 3 hours. I had my friend's ticket along with mine, with no plan to bring this girl, and she did not know I had to leave that morning to continue my travels. And I was paranoid as shit in a hostel I was supposed to be checking out of shortly. After explaining to the girl the situation, she seemed very angry and acted like she was going to leave. She realized my friend, whose ticket I had, was a girl, when I passed it through the hostel door, which she couldn't comprehend being just a friend. I calmed her down enough to agree to go to the island, because at this point, I didn't know what else to do besides trust that she would hopefully get us out of this without trouble. I missed the bus ticket I had purchased to where the ferry boarded, so I had to buy a new one of those for me and this girl, as well as the ferry tickets. She kept insisting me and her both wear masks, as she said anyone who knew the smell of the drug would be able to smell it on our breath. I thought this was only from smoking the drug, so this made me immediately much more paranoid. I also have light-colored eyes, so my pupils were as large as I'd ever seen them. I used dark sunglasses to try and cover them when we left the hostel. We sat at the back of the bus, and the entire ride the girl kept telling me she could smell the drug on my breath very strongly, and I shouldn't remove the mask at all. I could smell nothing on hers, but she explained to me this is normal for first-time users. We somehow made it to the ferry station without trouble, but I was too paranoid to sit in the same area of the boat as this girl. In the most anxiety-inducing, 1-hour-long ferry ride of my life, I stared towards the water, trying to avoid making eye contact with anyone. I had some THC edibles and a few tabs of LSD in my bag, so my mind was racing. I was either going to make it to this island and chill on a beach until I looked and felt normal enough to check into my bungalow, or I was going to go to prison and likely never be seen or heard from again. When it was time to get off the boat, I messaged the girl that this was the correct ferry stop and walked quickly, eyes directly forward until I was on the beach. At this point, I start getting calls from the girl saying, "Where are you?" I didn't get off at this stop, so the girl ended up getting off at the next stop, which is on the other side of this island that barely has any real roads. I had all of her clothes for the trip in my backpack, and now she was alone on the opposite side of an island she never really planned to go to with the clothes she was wearing. At this point, I told the girl to find somewhere to stay, and that I would bring the clothes when I can. I immediately called the friend whose bus/ferry ticket I had passed through the door, the only other person I knew from back home that I trusted, and explained that I was in a bad situation and to please find me as soon as she got off her ferry. I was waiting near the ferry exit on the beach, far from any other people, and explained the situation when she got there. Luckily, she was able to check in her bungalow and walk me there without me needing to interact with any staff. I relaxed in there, told her the whole story, and finally started to calm down. After researching the Port Sihanoukville ferry terminal, I learned that my paranoia may have been for good reason, as this is a major international drug smuggling city via ferry routes to other countries all over Asia. The next day, I rented a motorcycle and drove this crazy woman's clothes back to her. She pulled me into bed again, but due to the terrible road conditions, literally needed pushed up a hill by a local to get home and almost crashed multiple times. I had spent all day driving and had to make things fast to get back by dark. I basically hooked up with the girl and told her I needed to leave, which caused another temper tantrum. She couldn't understand that I was on a long vacation that had a pre-booked itinerary to some extent, so I could not simply stay there and hang out with her longer, nor did I want to. My plan for that night was to go to a party on this remote island with my friend from home. I returned the bike and somehow arrive at the new hostel, which was down the beach a bit from bungalows and closer to the party, literally 15 minutes before my friend was going to leave. This was only important because the party was a 20-minute walk from the hostel, and if you didn't know the way, it wouldn't be super easy to find. It involves walking back from the party through water while holding onto a rope as the tide covers the path to this secretive beach party. I'm having a good time at the party, and my friend eventually decides to leave around 2 to 3 a.m. since our ferry off of this island was a little after 6 a.m. Me, being the insane insomniac I am, decided to stay there another hour or two. At around 5 a.m., I see the crazy girl there once again. She sees me and gives me a look that I can only describe as half very angry, half very horny. She comes up to me and goes, "Come on, let's go have a drink." I did not want to interact with this girl anymore at this point, but she said she just wanted to talk and didn't need me to buy her a drink. I'm not sure if she was triggered by the fact that I had to leave 1 hour after finding her at the party to avoid missing my ferry, or if she was mad that she came to this island with a foreigner to stay in a bungalow and ended up staying alone in a cheap hostel, but she flipped out. I showed her I had literally no money in my wallet to buy her a return ferry ticket, and she slapped it on the ground and ran towards a large man with many face tattoos and started saying something to him, with both of them looking at me. I didn't know if this girl was making up something about me to get me in trouble, asking this buff man that looked like he was in a gang to beat me up, or just having another temper tantrum and gonna talk to a new guy to make me mad, but I didn't want to find out. At this point, I grabbed my wallet and made a mad dash for the hostel. My phone was at 2% and I noticed I was very late, with only 10 minutes until the ferry arrived. I ran faster than I've ever ran to this day, half running for my life and half running to make sure I didn't miss the ferry. I get close to my hostel and get a call from my friend. I pick up the call and my phone dies, so I don't even know what time it is. I sprint into the dorm room, open the door to see my friend packed and ready to go. I never even unpacked, so I just grabbed my bag and shoes and headed out. I knock out as soon as I board the ferry and take a much-needed nap. A few lessons learned from this experience. Never drink too much, especially in a foreign country, just because it's cheap. A sober me never would have done this anywhere in SE Asia. I know I mentioned I had LSD in my bag. This was for taking in a national park in Thailand that sells mushroom shakes and is very okay with psychedelics. Never let horniness take over. Try and ask yourself, would I do this if I wasn't horny? I'm sabotaging my future and don't know how to stop. My life is full of problems. I was suspended from university because I failed exams that I irresponsibly skipped, thinking everything would somehow work out. Now I have to wait a whole year to retake those exams so I can continue to the next semester. My parents don't know about this yet, and I have no idea how to tell them. Over the past year, I've lost people who were really important to me. While I've realized that their absence has brought more positives than negatives, I still feel bad about it. I feel bad because I thought I could rely on these people, but the truth was the exact opposite. Now I blame myself for being naive and blind to the signs that things weren't what they seemed. On top of that, I make terrible financial decisions, unnecessary debts, impulsive, meaningless purchases. No matter how hard I try to stabilize myself, there's always a new problem around the corner. I procrastinate on everything, which leads to a constant buildup of issues. I think this stems from high school when life was carefree and I got used to doing everything at the last minute, studying for tests the night before, finishing homework in class, completing projects on the final day of the deadline. It always worked out because I was actually a good student and managed to maintain excellent grades despite my bad habits. But now, life is full of responsibilities that I somehow think I can ignore and still get away with it. The problem is, I know this, yet I keep repeating the same destructive behaviors. I'm always searching for change. I try to build healthy habits, fitness, reading, meditation, but I can't stick to them. After 2 weeks, everything goes back to the way it was. Every night, I feel motivated to start something positive in the morning, but when my alarm goes off, the motivation disappears. I tell myself I'll sleep another hour, then another. I pick up my phone, spend hours on it, and suddenly it's time for work. Then the cycle repeats in the evening. The only area of my life where I don't seem to have problems is work, where I'm set to get promoted next month. But even there, the issues from the rest of my life sometimes creep in. There have been moments when I've left work early because the constant thoughts about how bad my situation really is wouldn't stop tormenting me. I left just to escape, to isolate myself, doing nothing, as if avoiding responsibility would also mean avoiding my problems. Still, work is probably the one thing holding my mental state together right now because it's the only area where things are actually going well. Another small win, although it might be too early to call it one, is that I haven't touched a cigarette in 20 days after 5 years of smoking. I'm determined to make this stick and not let it become just another temporary attempt at change. It's hard to fully explain how I feel, but the truth is that these problems have been piling up for the past 3 years. I take 1 step forward and 3 steps back. I know these are some of the most important years of my life for shaping my future, and I'm wasting them. I know I'll regret it later, and if I don't make a change, that regret will only grow. I don't know if I'm depressed or if there's something else wrong with me, but my mind feels like a mess. Clears up when I'm around people, but as soon as I'm alone, it starts all over again. I blame myself for everything. I'm terrified of disappointing my loved ones, and I can see how I'm letting precious time slip away. I know I need to make a change, but I just can't seem to break out of my comfort zone. I'm mentally exhausted from myself and the decisions I keep making. Need to confess about my messed up life that keep getting worse lately. Hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ev. I'm 18. For a bit of background, I'm disabled as a result of a stroke, and this is the first time I confess in a forum, but I've really needed it lately. To provide some context, I have quite a few concerns, whatever it's familial, personal, or professional. For a start, it's barely been 1.5 weeks since my grandmother, to whom I was very attached, passed away, so I don't think I'm in mourning yet. I still miss her. Then my stepfather and mother are getting divorced. The atmosphere at home is horrible. My stepfather is bipolar and has a kind of rage/aggressiveness about him. He once hit my sister and me violently. Of course, he never once apologized, and often belittled us. I hate him deeply for everything he's done to us, and I could write 10 double-sided pages about it. I'm happy for the divorce, but now he's even more aggressive, vulgar, and constantly looking for trouble. In fact, he got into trouble with my mother by going through her phone while we were away, which made my sister cry, on her birthday, by the way. Lately I can even sleep well. I feel unsafe for me and the others. To change the subject, I've had a girlfriend for 2 years, and I love her very, very much. But because there's a but, she's moving to Los Angeles in 1 to 3 years. For a bit of context, I'm French, so that's a 9-hour time difference. With the fact that she's emotionally dependent on me and needs a lot of physical contact, I know it'll hurt her less if we break up just before, and she's aware of that too. So I've already got it into my head that it'll be over the day she leaves, so we don't really have a future together. But I'm trying to do as much as I can to enjoy her and have as many memories of her as possible to cherish, because I fucking love this girl and she deserves to be loved. I've also had feelings for another girl for 3 years now. No matter how hard I try to contain them behind a concrete wall or whatever, they always end up reappearing. She's a wonderful girl whom I trust with my eyes closed and who's been my best friend and confidant for a very long time. She always manages to put a smile on my face. By the way, she knows that I had feelings for her, but not that I still do. I don't know if it's because things are so messy right now that her feelings are resurfacing, but I guess so. And finally, as a college student, with all this, my grades are dropping. I'm in, so I'm managing to catch up with all the manual stuff, but it's kind of hard. There are other problems in my life like my stress attacks, etc. But this is the summary of the ones I have right now. I hope I didn't take you time for nothing, and also, excuse me if my English can be bad sometimes. Like I said, I'm French. My mom's old friend was being a jerk to my animals, so I punished him when I was 11. When I was 11, my mom had this friend that was really annoying around his 40s, and he had a job interview around where we live, and they were in a high school friend group together, so she just let him stay in our guest room for 4 days while he went to the interviews and all that work stuff. They still talk here and they're now on Facebook, but she even finds him annoying. At the time, we had a cat, Nancy, and our 2 dogs. Our dogs have always been allowed on the couch. They are pretty tiny and we just don't care. But whenever this guy came over, he would try to boss me and my animals around all the time, with pushing them off the couch pretty harshly, and even made weird, unwanted comments to my mom that she would get upset at. Being 11, I took advantage of his stay with us with torture. He had to wake up at 6 a.m. one morning, so the night before I kept sneaking out my bedroom window and making his car alarm go off every 20 to 30 minutes for about 3 hours. He thought someone was trying to break into his car, so he spent half the night awake. Then I found out he was allergic to cats, not deathly. And I know this is evil, but I was 11 and didn't think just a kid being dumb. But he had this stupid bucket hat, so I cut some of my cat Nancy's hair and sprinkled some in his hat and rubbed her all over his pillow in his guest room. The next day he had terrible allergies. His eyes were red and he was all itchy and had to go home 2 days early. And if that wasn't enough, I made a hate page dedicated to Dave with all my friends, where we would find weird pictures of him from Facebook and upload them to an old Instagram account calling it Escape Dave. I would share the ACC, but I can't find it anywhere now. Damn, I was an evil kid, so worth it. I walked out after my mom accused me of mocking my dead sister. My 20F sister Amy, 26F, was diagnosed with leukemia when she was only 9 years old after a year of many misdiagnoses. I was only 3 years old back then, so I barely witnessed it, but it left a deep mark on our family. I always liked my sister, but we were never very close because we had always been polar opposites, as she was an introvert, shy, and understandably very sensitive, while I was a bubbly, hyperactive child. I would always want to play with her even when she wasn't feeling it, and I'm sure my insistence hurted her feelings more that once. But we moved past it. However, with the years she became hermetic, and after I moved out to go to college at 18, we stopped talking entirely. Around 5 months ago, my parents called me to tell me her cancer came back. I was in the middle of my college semester, but I decided I did not want to be barely a witness, and I would be there. Immediately after finishing an important exam, I went to the hospital. First, she did not want me to see her like that, but I convinced her. Knowing her, I avoided heavy conversations and instead focused on making her laugh, telling funny stories and playing with the Snapchat filters on my phone. I just wanted her to feel normal. Unfortunately, the cancer was aggressive and the hospital lacked the proper resources to treat it, so she ended up passing away 6 weeks after her diagnosis. To be honest, her death didn't emotionally affect me much. Not as much as it did to my parents. My mom was so devastated she started to talk to her, as if she was still there, and my dad was sad too. I felt really sorry for them, so I moved in for a few weeks to try and help organizing my sister's belongings, planning the funeral and doing chores for them, all while juggling with my exams. One day I needed to go to the bookstore to use their copier, so I told my mom, and she asked me why with a suspicious look. Confused, I told her I was just going to print school stuff, but her look didn't drop. I asked her what was it, and she said, completely straight-faced, out of the blue, I thought you were going to print the pictures you took of your sick sister and plaster them all over your form to get a laugh with your brain-dead college clique. I was shocked. I couldn't believe my own mother would accuse me of something so vile and evil when I had been nothing but supportive to my whole family during this entire ordeal, and she knew very well I had never, ever, done something remotely as cruel to my sister or anyone. She was like a stranger. I took a deep breath as I didn't want to bother making a scene and calmly said, "That was incredibly inappropriate. I am deeply hurt and offended that you can even suggest such things when I have been nothing but supportive to my sister and the family. Now I'm going to go back to college as I don't feel comfortable sharing a house with you, and I don't know if I ever will, but you and Dad can still contact me as you need any help with the paperwork." Then I left. After that, I texted my confused dad about why I left so suddenly, and he immediately took my side. He left the house too without saying when he would go back. My brain-dead college clique have been nothing but supportive. However, my mom keeps calling, accusing me of abandoning her and being a monster. She shared morbid details about my sister's death, like saying I wasn't there when my sister cried of embarrassment when she had to get her diaper changed, and that she has a crisis and tried suicide. A lot of personal stuff I don't think Amy would have liked her to share, but now that I know them, I understand why my mom is so traumatized and now she is alone. Still, I don't know if I can forgive her. I'm 25, always considered myself straight, but lately, things have shifted. Hey, let me just put it out there. This is probably one of the most confusing yet exciting things I've ever had to process about myself. I've spent my entire life identifying as straight. I've had girlfriends, good relationships, and even some wild experiences in bed. But here's the thing. A few years ago, something inside me shifted. I started noticing that I get aroused by a specific type of guy, those who are more feminine, more sissy, if you will. And before you assume anything, no, I don't see myself as gay or even fully bisexual. It's not like I'm into guys in general. It's this one very specific dynamic. Here's where it gets interesting. I've been with 2 guys so far. They were very submissive, feminine, and honestly, I liked it. It's not about romance or emotions for me, and I definitely don't enjoy kissing or anything that feels too intimate. What I do enjoy is dominating them, having them submit completely, and embracing that dominant side of myself in the bedroom. Why I'm writing this? Because I'm in a weird place. On one hand, I've always had girlfriends. Some of them were open-minded and adventurous in bed, which I loved. But on the other hand, I've started diving deeper into fantasies around BDSM and domination, and this new dynamic excites me in a way that's hard to describe. I want to explore it more. I feel drawn to pushing my boundaries, trying new things, and going deeper into the world of BDSM. But it's also new and different from what I'm used to. And then there's this lingering question. What does this mean about me? About my sexuality? About my relationships moving forward? My questions: is it okay to embrace this side of myself without feeling like I need to label it? How do I explore this without it affecting my current or future relationships with women? Is this just a phase? Or am I opening a door to something that's always been there but I never acknowledged? I'm curious, confused, and a little bit nervous. But I know one thing for sure. I want to understand myself better and not let fear or judgment stop me from exploring what feels authentic. If you've been through something similar or have any advice, I'd love to hear it. Am I overthinking? Is this just part of growing into myself and my desires? Let me know. Edit. I have never f'd a boy in my life before. I have had BJs given to me. I only f'd girls in my whole life. It had been a pretty good day for the mustard maniac. He'd had an idea for a new mustard gun, and he'd secured extra funding for the Northside Pool and Community Center that could last at least another 6 months. He'd even managed to get the money the drama team needed to put on their summer show. Sure, he'd needed to rob the local Chase, US Bank, PNC, and Bank of America branches all in a very short window of time, but the important thing was that he'd gotten the funding he needed to get. That he'd promised to get. In truth, he'd managed to finish out the funding he needed after PNC, and had already sent it on its way. The Bank of America was for a special reason. The mustard maniac wasn't the mustard maniac full-time, after all. For a lot of the time, he was just Bob Simon, community dream maker. He helped kids get college scholarships, find tutors, have a chance to do what they wanted to be able to do and learn, and generally made sure that people had a place to go and a way to get there. The mustard maniac was who he was when he needed to get money. Not that he didn't enjoy being the mustard maniac. He enjoyed it a lot. He liked putting the fear of God and society into the hearts of corporate banks and high-level executive types who thought they were above the law, above repercussions, above consequences. He didn't kill. That was the adjuster's style, not his. But he kept them humble, and he did it while wearing a mask and making everyone else laugh. He was pretty sure that was the only reason that he'd been able to keep going for as long as he'd been going. He'd been at it for 10 years, after all, and law enforcement was a lot of things, but stupid wasn't one of them. Not when it came to money crimes. They should have caught him by now. But he'd managed to constantly dodge them. Every time they got close to him, they'd get stupid. They'd screw up. They'd make damn fool mistakes didn't make with anyone else. At least, not anyone else who didn't do things like he did, with style and a silly costume and a fantastical name and a gimmick. He had a theory, a crazy theory, that something was out there making sure that he got away with it. As long as he played nice, as long as he didn't hurt anyone, As long as he did it for the right reasons, as long as he didn't cross the line, he was safe. And, since he wasn't really interested in hurting people, it was a line he was happy to stay well away from. Unmarked bills, please, Margaret. None of that trackable stuff. Besides, new bills are too slick and sticky for my taste. You know that, he said to Margaret, the teller on duty today, from behind his mask as he brandished a mustard gun at everyone in the bank. Yes, Mr. Maniac, said Margaret, not nearly as afraid of him this robbing as she'd been the first time he'd robbed this location. The bank manager was nowhere to be seen, actually, but everyone else was sitting down crisscross applesauce on the floor while Margaret the bank teller loaded a bank bag full up with money for him. He'd already sprayed his special melting mustard at the insured security equipment, so it's not like they'd be able to track him, but he liked to be safe. He also liked to give everyone a wad of bills if it went smoothly, and cameras made it harder for people to run away with their new money. The mustard maniac tried and failed to resist doing a jig. He was usually happy, but today he was more so than usual. Today he was going to buy the ring. The engagement ring. The one he'd been planning on getting for months now. The mustard maniac had been with his girlfriend, Rebecca, for nearly 5 years. She wasn't aware of his life as the mustard maniac, but then again, he didn't know everything she did, so he thought it was entirely fair. She'd been cagey the last 8 months. The last year and a half, really, ever since the new hero Firelight had appeared, but he'd just marked that down to new hero on the scene jitters. You didn't know what a hero was really like until they'd been tested, and Firelight hadn't been, not yet, although she seemed nice. Besides, he'd also been cagey. Part of his caginess was because he was hiding the fact that he was the mustard maniac from her. Never mind his engagement plans, but he'd still been cagey. She hadn't questioned him, though, and he'd not questioned her. He put that down to trust. His best friend, Isaac, had told him to give her time, that she'd tell him what was up eventually. He'd been friends with Isaac since forever ago, really, since before the world had changed, and gods and demons and superheroes and supervillains and magic had appeared. Certainly. He trusted Isaac. Isaac had also been cagey about as long as Rebecca had been cagey, truth be told, but then again Stormhammer, another hero, had appeared only a year prior and he too hadn't been tested yet. The mustard maniac didn't like Stormhammer. He didn't know why. He wanted to like him. He just didn't. Everything in the bank vibrated all of a sudden, then stopped. A few minutes later, everyone's phones started to go nuts. The mustard maniac sighed. It was always something. I know I said not to use your phones, but feel free to check them if you must. Just don't spoil the robbery. That's all I ask. A quick round of thank yous and phone checks later, and the mustard maniac was wheeling out a TV from some hidden storage closet with help from one of the hostages, and they were all watching the news. Lady Mab, a powerful magic user, had just confronted the Aeon League. The entire Aeon League. The premier group of superheroes in the country, and she'd fought them to a standstill. She'd traded blows with Captain Power, a flying brick as near to Superman as existed and leader of the Aeon League. Traded blows and survived. He'd had regular drinks with Lady Mab at the supervillain bar, after she first came onto the scene. She'd said that she could do a few little magic tricks here and there. She'd been the one to suggest the ring he was hoping to buy. A few little tricks, indeed. Devian the sentient ape was doing the post-fight interview with the press. The mustard maniac assumed it was post-fight, at least. Lady Mab was nowhere to be seen, and Captain Power was talking to the police and the fire rescue, his cape billowing majestically in the wind. That explained the ease of today's robberies. And, in the corner, nearly but not quite off-camera, he could see Firelight and Stormhammer making out like teenagers, their masks nearly in tatters. So could everyone else in the bank, apparently, as a big round of os went around. Devian the sentient ape must have realized that, because he went up to the camera and shifted it away from them, prompting laughs and boos from everyone, both on site and in the bank. Truth be told, nobody but someone who knew them would have been able to tell who they were. As far as anyone else would be concerned, it was just two good-looking new heroes making a love connection. As far as the mustard maniac was concerned, he'd just seen his girlfriend and best friend make out like high schoolers, live on camera. Ex-girlfriend and ex-best friend now, he supposed. The mustard maniac thought about that line. That line he wasn't going to cross. He looked around at everyone in the bank. So happy, so cheerful. Every emotion that he suddenly couldn't feel. He thought real hard about that line. Then, carefully, deliberately, Bob gave his mustard gun to Margaret the teller, took off his mask, and waited for the police to show up. No sense in getting a ring now, he supposed. Bob confessed to it. All in court, of course. Every crime, every location, every plan. He didn't sell out his supervillain associates, because you didn't do that to someone else just because your own life had collapsed around you, but if it had anything to do with him, and it didn't hurt the Northside Pool and Community Center, he talked about it. Damn near sang about it. Rebecca and Isaac had both been shocked and hurt that he was really a supervillain, all while they'd been superheroes. That he'd kept such a big secret from her, his girlfriend. From him, his best friend since ages ago. Bob didn't counter them with the fact that they'd been cheating on him and going behind his back for 8 months. Why bother? It wouldn't change anything. But he didn't say anything else either. He just nodded and took what they said as they said it. That seemed to hurt them more. Anyway, he thought about mentioning the ring to Rebecca, but shot the idea down. No point. Isaac knew about it, about his plan to propose, but he'd been his best friend, so of course he'd known. He'd been the first to know. She's the one. I know it, he'd said to Isaac not that long after he'd started dating Rebecca, and Isaac had agreed with him, had said that she was a real catch. Bob supposed that Rebecca wasn't the one after all. Not the one at least. They'd tried to explain why they'd done what they did. They explained that they had powers, and that meant they understood each other in a way he couldn't. That it had been professional at first, but they had so much in common, and they'd known each other for so long. It was an accident at first, really, but it felt right. He had to understand, right? Or something like that. He tuned them out after a while, and asked if they were done when they seemed to have wound down. They hadn't been done, apparently, but they got the message. At least the guard did. Rebecca and Isaac left soon after. Bob said something before they left, but he didn't know what. Whatever it was, it didn't matter. He thought he heard them shouting at each other after they left the room, but he didn't know what they were shouting about. Didn't really care, either. Not his problem anymore. When the trial came, the corporate and executive types that he'd so often made fools of had wanted him to look like a monster of a villain. The court, the judge, the jury, everyone just saw a very, very broken man. Bob explained to the judge in private why he came forward, why he gave up. He didn't want to publicly ruin Firelight or Stormhammer's superhero status. He got out anyway, somehow. But Bob wasn't the one who leaked it. The judge gave him 25 years with a possibility of parole with good behavior. Firelight and Stormhammer came to visit occasionally. They got married, had a kid, got divorced. They felt the need to keep him in the loop for some reason. Bob was always polite, and Reggie, his usual prison guard, would always eventually say, "All right, Mr. Maniac, back to your cell." When it got too much for him, when Bob's parole sentencing arrived, Firelight came and spoke on his behalf. Spoke about the good he'd done in his community. About the good person he was. About how he'd been a record inmate. The board granted him parole. Bob asked to be escorted back to his cell. Thank you very much. Bob didn't want parole. He wanted to rot away, as forgotten and unwanted as Rebecca and Isaac had made him realize that he was. As the lack of communication, of news, of anything, from the now very successful community center had made him realize. Firelight tried to convince him to accept the parole. "Miss Firelight, you're a respected hero," Reggie told her. "But Mr. Maniac doesn't want parole. He's made that clear. His name is Bob," she'd said, nearly shouted. "And he needs to get back to his cell. He's made his position clear." And then she left. And that was that. Another 5 years of life updates from Firelight followed after. She was doing the single mom thing, she told him. Being a mom and a hero was hard, but she made it work, she told him. It got harder and harder to pretend to care as the years went on, but Bob did his best, and Reggie was always there with a "Mr. Maniac, you need to get back to your cell." When things got too much. When his 10-year parole hearing came up, Firelight was there, speaking on his behalf. Once again. He was offered parole once again. He said no once again. The visits from her dropped in frequency after that. When his 15-year parole hearing came, it wasn't the usual board behind the table, and Firelight wasn't there to speak on his behalf. Instead, there, sitting alone at a hearing table that had seen better days, was Captain Power. Still leader of the Aeon League. Still powerful. Still around. Captain Power gestured for Bob to sit in one of the empty chairs. "Bob, Saturday you're getting out," Captain Power told him. "You do good for people in here, but you can do more on the outside and still do good work in here. We need you, so you're getting your parole and you're getting out." "No, I don't want to leave. I'm not wanted outside," Bob countered. He wanted to get up, to walk out, but something kept him seated, kept him listening. Captain Power snorted. "I'm not giving you an option. We need you, so you're taking your parole, whether you want to take it or not." Bob sunk into his chair, like it was a hole he could hide in. "Why do you need me, Captain? Why does anyone? I was a mildly talented chemist at best. If you need a chemist, you can hire a pro. If you need connections, I don't have them anymore. Let me die in peace and quiet." Captain Power smirked. "You misunderstand me. We don't need Bob Simon. We need the mustard maniac." Bob cackled at that. "I was a small-timer. I know people love to tell stories about ex-villains turning into superheroes, but I'm in my 40s. What the fuck would any super team want with me? The mustard maniac died in that bank 15 years ago." Captain Power sighed. "Training. You're old school. Famously old school. You knew the line. You could have crossed it that day the Aeon League fought Lady Mab, and your world shattered. Nobody would have blamed you. It would have been horrific, but nobody would have blamed you. You didn't." In that moment, Captain Power looked old, like a mask had come off. He had some grays. Bob noticed a couple age lines. Not many, but they were there. Captain Power looked away. New villains are popping up, and they don't know the line. They don't know anything. They break the rules, and it kills them. New heroes think that they have to be tough, brutal, and it breaks them in half. He looked up, locked eyes with Bob. "We need you." Bob sat up in his chair. He didn't know that things had gotten that bad. Sure, there were supervillain prisoners who came in, but they understood he was out. They didn't tell him things like this. "And you can't get anyone else? You had to come to me?" Captain Power shrugged. "We have ex-villain big-timers. Some folks who came over to our side, some folks who went rotten and later reformed. One of them, she's who spoke up for you." Bob's eyes went wide. "You're not saying that Firelight?" "No. Firelight's clean. It was a rough few years for her, but she never went rotten, unlike some people we both know who shall remain unmentioned. She's on some team in New England now. Needed a fresh start." Bob's brow wrinkled. "Then who? You fought evil gods and aliens. Everyone else I knew was just as small-time as me, or they're not in the business anymore. Nobody you'd know." Captain Power smirked. "Lady Mab, that's who. She's a white hat. Now, officially, as of about 5 years ago, just after your previous parole hearing. She's the one who said that we needed small-timers as white hats, too, and we've been keeping an eye on you ever since." "Lady Mab remembered me?" said Bob, astonished. He'd not known that he'd made that much of an impact on her. "Lady Mab might have gone feral on your behalf when she saw Firelight and Stormhammer canoodling that day, after she divined who Firelight was. I might have slipped some information to the press when I learned what was what. We need you, mustard, mania and all. They certainly all miss Mr. Bob at Northside. I think they named the new workshop after you." Bob grunted. "They're doing great without me. Why would they name something after a supervillain and a con?" Captain Power looked shocked. "You're the reason they're doing well. Every villain, hero, hood, and community activist in the city pulled together after your trial because of your trial. I don't know how you didn't know that." Bob shrugged. "Firelight never brought it up, and I guess nobody who was a regular at the center had gone rotten. Had gone to prison." The room got a little wet, a little hot. Bob wiped the water away. "What did they call it? The Bob Simon Shop?" Captain Power shook his head and smiled. "Nope. I think they went with the Bob Mustard Maniac Simon Workshop, although the younger staff just wanted to call it Mr. Bob the Maniac's room. Seems that some graduates came back and thought fondly of you. Captain Power reached under the table and pulled out Bob's old mustard gun. So, what do you say? Could you be the mustard maniac again? Bob took it. Felt just like it used to. The mustard maniac grinned. You know, my friends call me Mr. Maniac. Am I the asshole for telling my fiancé that his cousin's girlfriend is not welcome in our new home? I, 26F, have been with my fiancé, 27M, for 5 years now. Early on in our relationship, he and his cousin, Steve, 30M, decided to purchase a house together as co-owners. It was a fine arrangement, and for a while things were smooth. They lived there together along with my fiancé's sister and another cousin. But things started to shift around 2 years ago, when Steve began dating a woman who quickly became a fixture in the house. After only 4 months of dating, Steve's girlfriend moved into the house without consulting anyone. This came as a huge surprise to everyone because it wasn't discussed or agreed upon by the people already living there. Her arrival set off a number of problems that have escalated over time. She doesn't work, she isn't enrolled in school, and she doesn't contribute to any of the household expenses. Most of her days seem to be spent reorganizing common areas of the house while being glued to her phone, constantly talking to Steve. What's worse is her controlling behavior. She's very invasive. She regularly goes through Steve's phone, listens in on all his conversations, and makes sure that he's always by her side or on the phone with her. She practically keeps him under surveillance, to the point where he's never really alone, not even when he's at work or driving in the car. At first, Steve's girlfriend seemed to be the sweet, friendly type, and everyone was willing to give her a chance. But it didn't take long for her true colors to show. Over time, she began isolating Steve from the rest of us, subtly pushing family members out. She convinced Steve to ask my fiancé's sister and their other cousin to move out, leaving just her, Steve, and my fiancé in the house. She then started making my fiancé feel like an outsider in a house he co-owned. It's now at the point where she's even planning for her brother to move in after she managed to have Steve push his own family out. Her passive-aggressive behavior is draining. For example, she labels shared items like the salt with her name so no one else is allowed to use them. She constantly rearranges the shared spaces, putting things where they don't belong, and she completely ignores me when I visit. When Steve isn't around, she stays hidden in her room and acts cold, distant, and dismissive. It's clear that this is her true nature. She's only sweet when Steve is present, but when he's not around, she shows her true, rude colors. Some family members have already raised concerns to Steve about his girlfriend's controlling and disrespectful behavior, but he's refused to take action. He insists that he loves her and turns a blind eye to the situation, even though it's clear she's the instigator. While I believe she's primarily responsible for the way things have gone, I also think Steve shares some of the blame because he's enabling her behavior. Recently, Steve convinced my fiancé to sell his share of the house, so now we're in the process of moving out in a week. While I am relieved to be leaving, I now find myself facing another issue. I told my fiancé that I don't want his cousin's girlfriend anywhere near our new home. I've made it clear that I'm fine with Steve visiting, but I absolutely do not want her there. If she couldn't show us basic respect while living in a house that my fiancé co-owned, I don't think it's appropriate to allow her into our new space, where we should feel safe and respected. I don't want to stir the pot or create unnecessary drama, but I also refuse to let her continue disrespecting us, especially in a home that we're trying to make our own. My fiancé is caught in the middle because he wants to keep the peace with Steve, but I'm firm about this boundary. I don't feel like I'm asking too much, but my fiancé thinks I might be overreacting. So, am I the asshole for saying I don't want Steve's girlfriend in our home? Am I the asshole for not inviting my nephew on vacation? For the last 20 years, I've taken it upon myself to plan and organize a family vacation every couple of years. I absolutely love to travel, and these trips are a way for me to share that passion with my siblings and their children. About 10 people in total. Over the years, we've gone to some incredible destinations like Turkey, South Africa, Vietnam, Croatia, Panama, Mongolia, and Iceland. I cover the cost of the tour and transportation to the destination, while the family takes care of tips and incidentals. The trips usually cost between $4,000 to $6,000 per person, so they require quite a bit of planning and budgeting in advance. To make sure everyone can join, I poll the family about 18 to 24 months ahead of time to check everyone's availability. Everything has been going smoothly until recently. For the last few trips, my nephew, who is in his late 20s, has RSVP'd yes to all of them but has backed out at the last minute each time, always within a week of the departure. The reasons for his cancellations have never been valid for travel insurance claims. Work. Emergencies, he's an accountant, a friend's wedding, concert tickets, a high school 10-year reunion, etc. Every time, his last-minute cancellations have left me unable to recoup the cost of his airfare or accommodation. Now, I'm in the process of planning a Galapagos cruise for October 2026, and I've decided not to invite my nephew this time. His repeated unreliability has caused too much financial strain and frustration. I've shared this decision with my family, and the response has been overwhelmingly negative. They think I'm being unfair, and some are even accusing me of targeting him. No one is officially boycotting the trip, but I've been getting non-stop complaints about my decision. I've tried to compromise by asking him to give me a deposit. The idea was that if he actually showed up, I'd refund it, but this suggestion only seemed to make things worse. Now, my younger sister is the only family member still speaking to me. She's telling me that the family is in an uproar, calling me selfish and discussing writing me off permanently if I go through with canceling the trip. I'm in tears and don't know what to do. I really love my family and want everyone to get along, but I also don't want to keep enabling my nephew's behavior. So, was it an asshole move to exclude my nephew from this trip? Am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend it didn't look like he knew how to brush his teeth? I, 19, have been dating my boyfriend, 20, for almost a year. Recently, there's been something that's been bothering me more and more, and I'm not sure if I overreacted. I have OCD, and one of my biggest issues is being sensitive to smells, especially body odor. I can't stand any kind of bad smell, and I take hygiene very seriously. It might sound goofy, but it's a big deal for me, which is important to understand for context. My boyfriend is an avid cannabis user, and while I smoke with him, I've noticed something else lately. When we first started dating, I mostly smelled the weed on him, and I wasn't thrilled about it but knew it was something I'd have to adjust to. But after a while, I noticed another smell. It wasn't the weed, but something else, something strange. One day, I pointed out that he had food on his teeth, and when he opened his mouth to clean it, I was horrified. He had bright yellow plaque on the bottom of his teeth. Honestly, it disgusted me. I felt like it was something I couldn't ignore because it was a serious hygiene issue, so I started trying to help him out in subtle ways. I got us both matching mouthwashes, tongue scrapers, and a water flosser, and suggested that we could combine our routines to make it easier. I tried to make it sound casual, but the truth is I just needed his teeth to be cleaner. But it didn't really get better. His teeth seemed to be magnets for food, and every time I noticed something, I would point it out. He'd wipe it away, but the more I pointed it out, the more frustrated he got. He started to get embarrassed, and even though I'd always tell him privately, I could tell it was bothering him. I understand how it might come across as rude, but honestly, I don't want to kiss someone and end up with crumbs or food particles in my mouth, especially if they've been sitting there for a while. The other day, I noticed he had food on his teeth again, and when he wiped it, I saw that his gums were bleeding. I asked him why he was wiping so roughly, and he said he wasn't. That's when I noticed the weird smell again, so I asked him if he brushed his gums. He said he did, and that's when I, in a moment of frustration, blurted out, "Are you sure?" I couldn't take it back after that. He immediately asked what I meant, and I just told him the truth about the smell, the plaque, and the sticky feeling I sometimes get when kissing him. He got upset and told me I was rude for saying he didn't know how to brush his teeth and that plaque was normal. I said yes, it's normal, but his plaque was yellow and built up in a way that seemed like it wasn't being dealt with. He told me I was focusing too much on something so small, but I told him that cleanliness is really important to me. Now he's mad at me, and I'm not sure if I went too far. I don't think I was rude or wrong, but I also know I may have crossed a line. So, AITA for telling him it didn't look like he knew how to brush his teeth? Am I the asshole for telling my boyfriend it didn't look like he knew how to brush his teeth? IF 19 have been dating my boyfriend, M 20, for almost a year. Recently, there's been something that's been bothering me more and more, and I'm not sure if I overreacted. I have OCD, and one of my biggest issues is being sensitive to smells, especially body odor. I can't stand any kind of bad smell, and I take hygiene very seriously. It might sound goofy, but it's a big deal for me, which is important to understand for context. My boyfriend is an avid cannabis user, and while I smoke with him, I've noticed something else lately. When we first started dating, I mostly smelled the weed on him, and I wasn't thrilled about it but knew it was something I'd have to adjust to. But after a while, I noticed another smell. It wasn't the weed, but something else, something strange. One day, I pointed out that he had food on his teeth, and when he opened his mouth to clean it, I was horrified. He had bright yellow plaque on the bottom of his teeth. Honestly, it disgusted me. I felt like it was something I couldn't ignore because it was a serious hygiene issue, so I started trying to help him out in subtle ways. I got us both matching mouthwashes, tongue scrapers, and a water flosser, and suggested that we could combine our routines to make it easier. I tried to make it sound casual, but the truth is I just needed his teeth to be cleaner. But it didn't really get better. His teeth seemed to be magnets for food, and every time I noticed something, I would point it out. He'd wipe it away, but the more I pointed it out, the more frustrated he got. He started to get embarrassed, and even though I'd always tell him privately, I could tell it was bothering him. I understand how it might come across as rude, but honestly, I don't want to kiss someone and end up with crumbs or food particles in my mouth, especially if they've been sitting there for a while. The other day, I noticed he had food on his teeth again, and when he wiped it, I saw that his gums were bleeding. I asked him why he was wiping so roughly, and he said he wasn't. That's when I noticed the weird smell again, so I asked him if he brushed his gums. He said he did, and that's when I, in a moment of frustration, blurted out, "Are you sure?" I couldn't take it back after that. He immediately asked what I meant, and I just told him the truth about the smell, the plaque, and the sticky feeling I sometimes get when kissing him. He got upset and told me I was rude for saying he didn't know how to brush his teeth and that plaque was normal. I said yes, it's normal, but his plaque was yellow and built up in a way that seemed like it wasn't being dealt with. He told me I was focusing too much on something so small, but I told him that cleanliness is really important to me. Now he's mad at me, and I'm not sure if I went too far. I don't think I was rude or wrong, but I also know I may have crossed a line. So, AITA for telling him it didn't look like he knew how to brush his teeth? Am I the asshole for telling my brother to screw off after he complained about my wife wearing revealing clothing at home? So, my wife and I are newly married, and we have 3 teenage boys in our blended family. 2 are hers and 1 is mine. We've worked hard to create a sex-positive, body-positive home environment where self-expression is encouraged, and we prioritize body confidence. My wife is very comfortable in her own skin and occasionally wears revealing clothing around the house, like booty shorts or other outfits that some might consider provocative. This is something we're both comfortable with, and it aligns with the values we want to instill in our home and the kids. A few days ago, my brother came over to visit without giving any notice, and he made a comment about my wife's clothing. He said it was inappropriate and that it made him uncomfortable, suggesting that, with 3 teenage boys living in the house, she should be more mindful of what she wore. I immediately told him that this is our home, not his, and that if he has a problem with what she wears, he doesn't need to come over. When he didn't back down, I got more frustrated and told him to screw off. Now, he's upset and accusing me of being disrespectful, saying I'm prioritizing my wife's choices over basic decency for guests and setting a bad example for the kids. A few other family members have chimed in, suggesting that maybe I could have handled the situation more calmly, or that my brother has a point about how my wife's clothing could affect the boys. From my perspective, my wife isn't doing anything wrong. The boys are being raised with a strong emphasis on respecting boundaries, understanding body positivity, and being comfortable with themselves and others. If my brother has an issue with it, I feel like it's his problem, not ours. Am I the asshole for telling my brother to flush the toilet he used? I 19F, live with my mom, 50SF, and my brother, 17M. We have a main bathroom that I usually use to shower, and my brother also uses it. Last night, after my evening shift at work, which ended at 8 p.m., I got home and went to take a shower. When I walked into the bathroom, I saw that my brother had pooped and left it there. I knew it was him because I would have remembered if I'd done it, and my mom has her own bathroom. I didn't want to shower in a stinky room, especially since my brother has a habit of forgetting to flush the toilet, so I reminded him that there was poop in there. As soon as I got his attention, he was really short with me, so I told him to flush it more directly. When he didn't do it, I raised my voice and told him again. He said he needed a minute, which I didn't hear and didn't believe, considering his attitude. He also told me not to go into his room, which I wasn't doing. Here's where I might have been in the wrong. I went to his doorway and told him again. I wouldn't have done this if he didn't have a history of being rude and entitled, and not responding to reminders. At that point, I was fed up. I was tired of being treated like crap, pun intended. So, I stood in his doorway for a couple of minutes. I noticed he was watching YouTube and playing with Legos, two things that were non-urgent and could be paused for just 20 seconds to flush the toilet. But he didn't budge. I told him again that it had been longer than a minute and that he needed to flush the toilet. He told me I was throwing a tantrum and to get out of his room. Again, I wasn't in his room, before closing the door on me. I then started banging on the door and screamed at him that I wouldn't leave until he flushed the damn toilet. At that point, our mom heard the noise and asked what was going on. I told her my brother had forgotten to flush the toilet and wasn't doing it now. My brother tried to say I was screaming at him and that I could have just flushed it myself to avoid the issue. But here's the thing. My brother thinks it's okay for us to clean up after him, and when we don't, he calls us dramatic. That's the real issue. If he had just forgotten once or apologized, I would have flushed it myself without making a big deal. But he constantly talks to us like we're his servants, and he never seems to think his behavior is an issue. My mom started questioning him about why he didn't flush, but when he pushed back, she told me to just do it because it would be easier. I said I wouldn't because it wasn't mine, and she got mad at me. In the end, I didn't shower at all. I'm now feeling like I'm overreacting. I know it sounds petty, but it seems like in a normal family, my brother would have just flushed the toilet after the first reminder, or at least communicated respectfully when he needed a minute. Instead, he expects us to cater to him and gets defensive when we ask him to do something basic like flushing a toilet. How do I deal with my 30s F mother's 60s F compulsive Marie Kondoing enough to let her back in my place? I've obviously known her my entire life. My mom, 60SF, has some kind of reverse hoarding disorder where she needs to clear everything out of a space. If it exists, it needs to be in a drawer or behind a cabinet. She's constantly bringing things to Goodwill, throwing things out, etc. If random items are visible in an area, she starts to get stressed out. My dad banned her from throwing his tools out, so she hasn't gone in the garage in the last decade. If she's stressed out from something else, she only feels better when she gets rid of items. I spent a large portion of my childhood buying my things back from Goodwill, and it got to a point where the Goodwill didn't touch anything she brought for at least a week so the family could retrieve it. My mom, of course, thinks this is completely normal and modern people just own too many things and have too many attachments. My dad has a shopping addiction, so minus his tools, they're sort of a well-matched set. Neither of them have any impetus to change how they are. I refused to let my mom into my place as an adult as a result. Things came to a head 10 years ago when I had a bunch of telescope lenses sitting on a dresser. Mom sent me a text at work asking me if I was cleaning them. I said no. I got home to find out they'd be brought to Goodwill because she thought they were left out to donate, since she assumed they would have had a place otherwise. I got her a hotel room and told her she couldn't come back inside unless she sought professional help. She responded by willingly staying at a hotel every time she comes to visit and never bringing up this incident. I'm older and getting married, and we intend on having children sooner than later. My mom suddenly expressed concern that I haven't allowed her to stay over in a decade. I reminded her that her throwing things out habit hasn't changed, and I can't leave her unattended in my home. She pointed out she doesn't do this at my brother's house and I shouldn't be afraid of letting her in mine, though I have a sneaking suspicion it's because my SL's parents are locally very influential and my mom is afraid of their opinions of her. Notably, she doesn't stay at my brother's for more than 2 or 3 days at a time, and my brother also owns a very large house with rooms they throw a lot of things into before company comes. I have a 2-bedroom apartment and maximalist decorating style, and my fiancé's parents live overseas and don't speak much English. I would love to come have her stay over, because aside from this we have a good relationship. I would like her to have a normal grandparent relationship with my future children, and I would also like some live-in help after giving birth. I can't because I can't afford to replace everything I don't put in a drawer. Is there any way to proceed besides leaving the boundary where it is and hoping she changes? My close friends pranked me real bad and I can't move on. My friends, 20m, of 7+ years played a prank on me about a girl who is interested in me, and even though it doesn't mean much to them, I'm extremely distressed. I, 20m, was recently talking to me friends, to whom I'm really close and they mean a lot to me and I to them, on video call. We do those for at least 1 to 3 hours a day because we are studying in different countries. One of my friends told me that I have a girl I know that might be interested in talking to you. Me, who had gone through a really bad breakup 2 years before, was quite ecstatic. I didn't have a lot of romantic interaction with women after that, as I was either too scared or felt as if I was betraying my love by trying to fall in love again. Now, when he bring that up to me, I'm really wanted to go ahead with it, as I didn't want to be a miserable alone fuck again. I decided to trust him on 2 conditions. 1. He is someone I've been close to for more than 7 years, so trust comes as a given. 2. He showed me Instagram messages from this friend of his who was interested in me. I started talking to her 2 days back and it went well. Not too well as it would have seemed suspicious to me, but well enough to help me gain my confidence and lowly self-esteem. I was quite happy about this romantic interaction and it quite literally made my days. My mood improved, I started to feel better about myself and I was what you would call a happy person. Come to today, I talked to her after the F1 race like normal. She was also a big fan apparently, and she video calls me. Now, I'm ecstatic about this cause why wouldn't I be? To my disaster, it was 2 of my friend who had been talking to me all this, and they were willing to continue this longer, but didn't cause they thought this wasn't the right thing to do. They had made the Instagram account seem genuine and foremost. Their word was something I trusted with all my being. To them, it is a prank and I'm overreacting. Was just for 3 days and it's not like I was in love. I guess I was, or having a genuine interaction with a female made me feel I was. I am someone who has been starved of love for more than a year and maybe I had enough of it. Maybe I was willing to move on and actually be happy. I had tears in my eyes when I was questioning them about all this. My self-confidence is shattered again and I feel ugly as fuck when looking into the mirror. Your advice regarding this will be appreciated. A question from my girlfriend, F24. Makes me, M23, think she may have caused sexual trauma. I feel really lost and don't know if I can heal in this relationship. Looking for advice? My girlfriend, F24, and I am 23, have been together for 2 years. For the most part, our relationship has been wonderful. She's pretty, funny, successful, and we're both very close to each other's families. Everything aside from our sex life feels really great. However, there have been a few incidents that I can't stop thinking about, and I'm unsure how to move forward. We both deal with mental health challenges. She has OCD, and I struggle with social anxiety and depression. Recently, she asked me if she may have sexually traumatized me due to an incident in our relationship. Her question caught me off guard. I told her I wasn't sure and had never really thought about it, but I didn't think so. Since then, my thoughts have been spiraling, and I don't know if I have been traumatized or not, and if I have been, should I stay? For context, during the first year of our relationship, she frequently shared her strong dislike of pornography and the harm she believes it causes. I lied to her and said I had stopped watching porn, knowing it was wrong. When she found porn on my phone, she was devastated. She spent days questioning me. Why I watched it, why I lied, if I even found her attractive. She almost pressured me into admitting I loved lusting after other women, which wasn't true but felt like something I had to say to make it stop. This deeply affected me because I already have issues with disappointing others and beating myself up over mistakes. However, I knew that its effect on me was not as important as I had done something extremely wrong to her. Around this time, our sex life started to dwindle, and it's been inconsistent since. We have some stretches where we are very active, followed by dry spells. Later, while struggling with her OCD, over the course of a few weeks, she confessed to all the bad things she'd ever done because of a compulsion. Most of it wasn't even bad, but she admitted that before I was caught watching porn. She had been watching it herself. I didn't know how to feel. On one hand, it felt hypocritical, but I also understood she was dealing with her mental health at the time. I forgave her and was not mad at her, but later expressed that it did hurt how she had questioned me for days and how I felt awful from the experience. Recently,